But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
Coming to you sort of late, but we got there in the end from
Still live.
Still live, yeah. Coming to you, in the end, we managed to make it from radioactive meme land, deep within a windy and icy and so slow sometimes, such a blah, blah, blah. We are the survivors of the alt-right apocalypse, the few, the brave, the tardy, once more wading into battle against the lobster hordes with Rantraiser, Fundzerker, Shillzerker, long-ass title that I can't be arsed to remember, Fundraiser.
Whatever number
One
it
at
is.
113.
Current number.
It's Rantraiser current number. And somebody is still echoing. This is why we were late, folks. Oh, and I'd like to introduce special guest, Prince of Queens, who is currently the one who's echoing.
Okay, I will be turning down my thing a little bit more.
Yeah.
Hopefully that'll fix
Yeah, but just
it.
mute till when you're not talking.
I
All
can
right.
do that too.
Yes. All right. So let's this is a Rantraiser, but it is also a Shillzerker, a Fundzerker, a something or other a clever portmanteau that I forgot.
It is a money badger extravaganza.
Oh yeah, a money badger. Yeah, that's good. That's excellent. Who thought of the term money badger? It's perfect. All right.
Yeah,
so
it is absolutely. And why not?
I think it was Kevin Logan, actually. So thank you, Mr. Potato Man. All right.
Mr. Human Thumb. Yeah.
Your cat's still cute, though, Kevin. It's an adorable cat. All right. So go to feedthebadger.com and put some shekels into the hat. Today, we are trying to, or hopefully we'll be successfully, there do or do not, there is no try. We're trying to get the money for Hannah and Prim now as well, to create their radio shows. Hannah is responsible for the Thursday night HBR talk, which is always very enlightening. Hannah's sort of like the steamroller. Once she gets going, she don't stop till her opponent is completely flattened and squeezed of all juices. And of course, the adorable specter of death, Prim, who headlines our HBR health and help shows. So if you would like to see those shows keep going, and you'd like to see Prim and Hannah on them and creating them and responsible for basically getting them done, please go to www.feedthebadger.com and throw a few shekels in the hat. And I will hand it over to my co-pilot, Brian, for whatever he has in store for us first, which I don't know. I'm getting into this completely fresh.
Heaven fucking forfend. What the fuck kind of monstrosity are you going to put in front of us today, Brian?
Well, I have a lot. I have some options. So, first of all, I got, this is, there's a show on, I think it's on Cartoon Network. It's called Soft Focus. It's part of their Adult Swim line. So it's called Soft Focus with Jenna Friedman, and it's entitled Sexual Harassment in Gaming, because, this is a comedy show, and these are the kinds of things we should be talking about. Soft Focus with Jenna Friedman 2, Adult Swim. It's a comedy sketch. Soft Focus is kind of a parody of a kind of, I guess you could say like a investigative reporting on a specific subject.
Current events show, a mini
documentary. Yeah, like those kinds of things, right. So I got that as one option. I have an article from Vice. It's called The Men's Liberation Movement That Time Forgot. I'll give you the subtitle for this. Nowadays, the men's rights movement runs on the gamut from incels to red pillars. Ooh, scary. But in the 1970s, men's livers looked something like feminists? Question mark.
Oh, my goodness. Until they were kicked out of the movement for asking inconvenient questions. Oh, my goodness. No, they totally looked like that until they, were like, hey, we have issues too. And then they were like, be gone, thought.
What's behind door number 3?
Door number 3, I have 2 other ones actually, but door number 3 is a funny little podcast called It's Not About Me, where Cassie J shared this on her Twitter a little while back. And she said, oh, it's so great that essentially this was a feminist, not just a feminist podcast, but a Canadian intersectional feminist podcast, which explores feminism.
Brian's going totally robotic for me.
I am? Am I robotic for everybody else?
Not me.
Oh, now you're back.
Oh, okay. It's a feminist podcast that goes it's Canadian, and it's essentially I'm not kidding when I say this, okay? It's run by 2 women who are yoga instructors that explore the intersection of social justice, feminism, mindfulness, body positivity, and yoga. and they reviewed the red pill.
Don't they know that yoga is cultural appropriation?
You know, they did an episode of their podcast addressing that very thing. I didn't have the strength of will to watch it or listen to it, so I don't know how they managed to sort of weave through that logical minefield, but they continued to make videos despite everything, or podcasts rather. So this podcast is really funny. I didn't think we should listen to the whole thing because it's like 48 minutes, but there's like the preview bit that is pretty funny in what they actually challenge their views, and they sort of like get where Cassie J's coming from, and they come away from it with a very, sort of I guess the initial shock of taking the red pill and how it affects them. So I thought that was interesting, but they're also just the way they talk. It's just funny. And I don't know, like an intersectional yoga podcast is just insane.
Are they like totally like,
yes, exactly like that. Yeah. Totally. That's what I love about it. They're so basic.
Seriously, like totally, we have our things.
Mm-hmm.
And
hey, you guys, I kind of feel like you're making fun of me right now, just saying.
And then
never you, Prim.
No. Then the last thing we have is an article from redstate.com called "A Queer Feminist Activist is Bleeding on Men's Restroom Floors to Fight Misogyny." So
okay, let's do that one.
Is that the one you want to do? Okay.
Oh my God, she picked my choice. Oh,
first off,
or at least what I put in.
This is the one. This is the one we need to do.
Okay, wait, I have a prediction.
We do nothing more today than this. We have freaking fulfilled our mission.
So my prediction is that it's going to be because they'll slip and fall in the blood.
No, actually nothing so practical. Somehow they're going to determine from a single spot of blood the entire mission statement of her protest, which, or I don't know, maybe she wants to give them AIDS.
All I gotta say is, as a woman going through menopause, right, who has periods from hell that show up out of the blue after like months and months and months, and then it's like literally Niagara Falls over the edge of the couch, red Niagara Falls, right? I have never in my life, up until a year ago, seen spots of blood on my bathroom floor because I just didn't get there in time, right? Okay, I can understand how there are some women who have issues where, there's just a lot of blood. There's a lot of blood. of blood.
The Crimson Tide, I like to call it.
Yeah, it is literally it's a cataract. It is a waterfall. You could send people on tour via canoe, from
maybe over in a barrel.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. But I still don't leave those drops of blood on the bathroom floor.
Well, this isn't really about some kind of menstrual-based incontinence.
I clean up after myself.
Yeah, this isn't menstrual-based incontinence, Karen. This is deliberate. She's deliberately doing this. She's deliberately smearing bodily fluids in public washrooms.
Which is gross.
But here's the thing. Okay, here's the thing. She's going into the men's washroom to do this, to put biohazards on the floor of men's washrooms. And nobody's like, you're putting a biohazard on the floor of, like, just nobody's like just stating the obvious. You are putting a biohazard on the floor of a men's washrooms. Now, they're probably wearing shoes, so it's not going to be like a huge deal. But really, that's not just gross and unsanitary. It's sort of dangerous.
Oh man, I've literally been the person who had to clean up a bathroom after somebody sprayed diarrhea all over the bowl and the seat and everything. Right? And it's like, that's lovely, and why am I having to freaking deal with this? Because this person has an unlimited access of tap water and toilet paper. At the very least, they could clean up after themselves, right? I have had to clean up loogies spit into the sink and not rinse down. Like literally you're hacking up a freaking booger from your lungs, a lung butter, right? Spitting it into the sink and not rinsing it down. Why would you leave that for me to deal with?
Because she's never dealt with it kind of a job.
Yeah, but it's like, why would anybody leave? And women who flush tampons and plug up and back up the sewers, right? And you know why the sewers are backed up, because you know what washes up first out of all of the things in the floor drain? The tampons. Why would you do that?
So the thing that I'm thinking about this is that I don't see why they didn't take it a step further. And instead of just, for one, where does the blood even come from? Is it actually period blood, or is it like chicken blood? That's a question. But I think that what they should be doing is they should find a very realistic fetus or newborn baby that they could leave dead, and it could be some anti-abortion or like pro-abortion thing where it's like, if we don't get the abortions, we will have our babies in the bathroom in the men's room.
Yeah, no, that would be like a perfect political statement for the shout your abortion crowd.
They could, in fact, they could probably just take the anti-abortion material and then repurpose it for pro-abortion.
I'm just like looking at this and going like, okay, well, we literally have a situation where cops wear gloves. They wear like latex gloves often when they're dealing with people. That paramedics, when they actually, like, they don't necessarily give mouth to mouth anymore, because they don't know what they're contracting, right? And you might say, well, a kiss isn't going to necessarily give you AIDS, but you never know.
Well, it can give you other diseases.
Yeah, and so you're looking at blood, saliva, all of these things. They're all biohazards, right? Semen, right? Biohazard. All of it's a biohazard. If there's bodily fluids coming out of a body and you don't know the status of that body, you treat it as a biohazard.
So, do you want to actually see the article?
Yeah, we want to actually see the article.
Right,
yeah, we want to see how fucking fucked up this.
So first, let's look at the super chats because we've already gotten a bunch of them. Thanks, guys, for the super chats. It might be better, though, consider instead sending your money to the actual fundraiser because they take less money out. Google takes 30% of all of our super chats, and if they don't like your super chat, they take 100% and give it to a charity of some kind. So just bear that in mind, but thanks for the donations regardless. Polaris589 gives us $5 and says, have you ever donated $100 to HBR just to flex on the femmes? So yeah, that question I think goes out to the audience. Consider doing that to poem the femmes, to trigger the libs, as it were. Mr. Roboto gives us $2 and says, "Is this going to be a long sausage or a kielbasa?" I don't know. That's up to.
That's up to us.
Yeah, it's up to. That's up to you.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
If you get us to our goal,
chode. It's gonna be chode. Chode.
Well, it will depend on.
100% chode.
I think we'll go. We'll go for
medium, short.
with you. Really? You really think you're gonna get thick, meaty, and short with you on a show?
Yes.
Seriously.
Yes, I do.
Okay, well, I'm not going to be responsible for your delusions. Anyway, we will go for at least an hour and a half. And please do direct your browser to www.feedthebadger.com and put a few shekels in the hat for Prim and Hannah. We have gotten one donation since the start of the show. Oh my fucking... Are you kidding me? This name? Oh, God.
Say it, Alison. Say it.
I can't say the full name because I don't know if it might be somebody's last name. So I'll try. I'll just say the first. Jesus fucking Christ! Are you fucking killing me? Okay. Chigozi. Oh God. Chigozi. You know what? I probably could say the last name and nobody will even know if I'm saying what the fuck I'm saying. Chigozi Okoroji. Look at this fuck. I put it into the. I put it into
Okoroji.
Okoroji. Okay. Chigozi Okoroji. This has to be somebody trolling me. I'm pretty sure it is because I recognize the email address.
Yeah, you also can't pronounce anything. So there you go.
All right. Well, so go to www.feedthebadger. Put $5, $10. It all helps. You can buy Prim a coffee, and I'm sure she will very much appreciate it. You can buy Hannah a sandwich, and she will love you forever. Okay, and I also want to thank Nathan for your very generous donation of $100. Charles for your very generous donation of $100, and you do this every month, so thank you. Robin for your generous donation of $100, and Spencer for your generous donation of $25. So go, guys, go do it. Put $5 in the hat, $10. Every bit helps. Feedthebadger.com. Choose help Hannah and Prim. Create radio. All right. Go back.
Okay.
Back to you, Brian.
Back to the super chats. All right. So Mr. Roboto gives us another $2 and says, "Can we piss on women's restrooms for counter protest?" No, that's obviously misogyny, and you can't do that to prove misandry, because trying to prove misandry is actually misogyny. Haven't you learned anything about Clown World? Honk honk. Polaris 589 gives us $5 and says, "Really, Karen, talking about your blood dumps?" You know what?
Yes, and I will
That's
talk
a good
about
one.
That's a good one. About them until the freaking cows come. Well, at least until I'm done this transition.
Yeah.
I will continue to talk about them.
Until then, she will be checking into the Red Roof Inn in the foreseeable future. Okay, so now we're going to actually look at the article and let's see what it says. So, feminist LGBT activist Erica Hart, by the way, she's a lesbian. This is just to get ahead of the ball before people start saying she's lesbian. It says queer feminist activist, okay? Has apparently come up with a brilliant idea to remind those dastardly men that anyone can get their period, and it involves going into the toilet stall of a men's restroom and leaving a drop of blood on the floor. Basically what she's saying is that, well, it's a trans argument she's making, I guess. Hart, an adjunct at Columbia University School of Social Work, posted the photo on Twitter, adding that she, quote, left a present in the men's bathroom as a reminder that any gender can get their period and use whatever bathroom they want. And there's a picture of her tremendously courageous act of activism where she allowed a drop of blood to fall on the floor. Do you realize that most men, if they go in and see that, they're going to think that some guy just had like a nosebleed? Or they're going to think that maybe some guy cut himself, working on his car or chopping down trees or doing something else masculine. You haven't proved anything with this ridiculous image.
Yeah, which is
No.
clearly why they should have nail polished little feminist insignia. Like they should have spent some time and had the women logo with a fist in the middle.
Yeah. Put a little bit of
put a
work
little
in.
put a little manifesto on microfiche in the center.
Oh my god, I love microfiche. It was awesome.
Yeah, but just a little one, just in the dot. Just to make sure that people know what's going on. I just want to point something out though. All right, so she's making this statement about how any gender can get their period. You don't have to actually pee all over if you're a man who wants to make a similar statement, you don't actually have to pee all over the women's restroom. Just go in there and lift all the seats. All of them. And then super glue them lifted. And that's a statement about how any gender can have to stand up to pee. And also, guys, if you're listening to this and you live with a woman, you can also make this statement at home. Just keep the lid lifted. Just keep it in the up position all the time. And whenever she says, "Why are you keeping it in up position? Why haven't you put the lid down?" You can say, "Well, I'm making a statement about transgender rights." Any
Or you don't have to
gender.
glue it. You can just like physically remove it. Just it comes out. Just like unscrew the thing, take it off.
Yep.
And then
Yeah.
hide
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Take the toilet seat away. Yep.
Can
Yeah,
I get
exactly.
Can I get an honest answer from Karen and Alison? So when I was a kid growing up with a feminist mother and feminist sisters, there was always this, Prince, you left the toilet seat up, and then sometimes I would try to fire back and I would say, well, in fairness, if you guys keep the toilet seat down, or if I keep the toilet seat down, I might forget to put it up and pee on the thing. And so, it's not the worst thing in the world. And their response would be to say that if the toilet seat is left up, they will literally fall in the toilet. Has that ever actually happened to you?
My ass is too big for that. Sorry, no.
No, but yes, I have actually fallen in the toilet seat, but that was when I was living in an apartment on my own, right? And so the toilet seat was never up, right? And then I would have an overnight male guest, and he would leave the toilet seat up, and then I would go in the middle of the night in the dark and fall into the toilet, right?
Okay,
So
did you actually get wet? Was it like that?
yes, oh yeah.
Oh, okay. So there was
100%, 100% yes. Your ass ends up in the water. But
I mean, Karen
yeah,
doesn't have an ass, so Karen just ends up in the water. Also, don't we
yeah,
call
no,
that?
my ass is so small that
Yeah, make sure you don't flush if
It
Karen
could
ever
actually
ends up
flush.
in the toilet.
Yeah, you could actually flush
You can
Karen's
actually flush
ass.
Karen.
Just her ass.
Yeah,
And
you
don't
can
we call
flush my
that?
ass.
Don't we also call that a gentleman caller? Is that what you meant? Like you had a gentleman caller that night?
No, I had a hookup. But okay, so
Jesus Christ, Brian is trying to be genteel about it.
yeah, and I'm trying to be honest about it. I'd have a hookup, and he'd leave the seat up, and we'd fuck like rabbits, and then he'd go and he'd use the bathroom. He'd leave the seat up, and then in the middle of the night, I'd get up to go pee, and I'd fall in, and I'd get my ass wet, and absolutely yes, really awful, right? And it's not even just because your ass gets wet, but it's also because it's like kind of when you're walking down the stairs in the dark, a staircase that you're familiar with. So that there's like 13 steps, right? And you miscount, and then you go to put your foot down to, like as if you're putting your foot down on a lower step, but you're actually hitting the floor, or like you've just because you're in the dark, you're working in the dark, and you're familiar with what the situation looks like, and that 2 inches or 1.5 inches, that is the difference between the seat being down and the rim, right, means that when you go to sit down and you're familiar with that particular toilet, right, then you actually fall, right, because you're putting your foot down on a space where you're expecting floor, and there is no floor.
Yeah, it's like when you're taking the stairs and you think there's another stair, but there isn't.
Yeah,
And you
yeah.
like kind of, you almost die.
you lose your balance, and that's why you end up falling in. If you were feeling around in the dark, right, unfamiliar with the space and being super, super careful, you would never fall in, right? But you're not, because it's your fucking bathroom, right?
Yes.
And you're used to it, and you've gotten up in the middle of the night like 150 fucking times and sat down, and the seat has been there, right? And so there is an issue with that, right? And there is an issue with, I would suggest that your mother and your sister would have been better explaining to you that it's not the seat that should go down, it's the lid that should go down. The lid should be down.
Okay. Well, so I've learned that the toilet seat gap is actually real.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is. And the lid should be down. The lid should be down because you should actually put the lid down and then flush. Because if you leave the lid and or the seat up, if the lid's up and you flush, what you're doing is you're actually aerosolizing the contents of the toilet bowl, and then they get deposited on your toothbrush and other items in the bathroom.
Okay.
So
Can
there's
we
a really
finish?
good reason to keep the lid down, but not just the seat. Okay.
Not
Well,
the seat.
I will tell you,
individually.
as someone who's had female roommates my whole life, they are disgusting about that, and they don't close the lid. I actually do typically close the lid when I use the bathroom. I didn't know that that was the reason you're supposed to do it, but I know that, like, I'm just kind of spurgy that way. Like, I don't like to leave things open. Like, I close doors behind me and stuff like that. So I just do the same. So okay, so back to this though. So here's her tweet. She says, by the way, her name is Erica Hart, and she identifies as she and they. So I don't know how those pronouns work, but those are her pronouns. Left a present in the men's bathroom as a reminder that any gender can get their period and use whatever bathroom they want. It's funny because she thinks that men in these bathrooms are the ones that are. That's all we talk about. You know, when men go to the bathrooms, is that they don't want women in their bathrooms.
Yeah, no, it's like literally you have a situation where, you know, if you're going to a hockey game or something like that, and there's a huge long lineup at the women's bathroom, and there's always a shorter lineup at the men's bathroom because, and I will grant this, because up until recently, there has been an equal allotment of physical space for men's and women's bathrooms, right? But the equal amount of actual freaking square footage, right, doesn't parse to the same number of people who are able to actually use that space, right? Because men's bathrooms have urinals. Urinals are super fast. You can squeeze them together really, close, right? So you can essentially process 20 men who need to take a piss in the same amount of space as you process 5 women who need to take a piss, because the women all need to go in a stall with a door that closes, and then they need to like freaking deal with their shit, right? And so essentially, because the male process of taking a pee is much more efficient than the female process of taking a pee, not just efficient in the terms of the time it takes to open your zipper and whip your dick out and do it and then shove it back in, versus what a woman needs to do to clean up, right? But also in terms of the amount of space it takes to give a man enough space to pee versus a woman enough space to pee, because women want more privacy, right? And women want walls around them. So what you're looking at is a situation where you often have women going into the men's bathroom to use the stalls in the men's bathroom, because they just want to pee, and the lineup for the ladies' room is too big, right? Absolutely 100%. That's something that needs to be considered. But this issue that men object to women in their bathroom, No, they don't. Men do not object to women going in their bathroom. The only times men object to women coming into the men's bathroom is when the women are like, "Oh my God, you're peeing in front of me!" Like, "Oh my God, like how, like you're harassing me." Yeah, no, men don't object to women coming into the men's bathroom and using the stalls, right? They absolutely don't. And so what we're looking at is a situation where, and this is why all of the unisex bathrooms, all of the gender neutral bathrooms, right? What you see in a place that has essentially two bathrooms, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the women's bathroom remains the women's bathroom and the men's bathroom becomes the gender neutral bathroom. And it's because men are much less likely to object to people of other genders coming into their bathroom.
Yep.
Even though men are more likely to be having their private parts exposed to everybody in the bathroom.
Yeah, it just seems like the whole scenario is entirely formulated in the feminist imagination, where they just get to think that men actually care about this when they don't, but they think that because they are projecting what they would care about
Yep.
onto men, and like ultimately that is they would never actually ask men if they care, because even if the men told them, they wouldn't believe them.
Can you imagine, in this woman's mind, she believes, I think, let's just go with what she says and take it at face value, that there are a couple of chads that would go into this bathroom, and one of them's like, "Hey bro, I'm gonna go ahead and use a stall, man." The other guy's like, "Yeah, go ahead, I'll be over here combing my hair and like admiring my dick," and then the guy goes in there and he says, "Holy shit, dude, come here and look, there's a drop of blood on the floor. What does that mean?" And
guys,
what's up,
guys?
Yeah.
Breaking news. Breaking news apropos of nothing. Apparently, Andy Worski's in jail right now because he pulled a gun on somebody on a live.
God!
I saw the footage of that floating around Twitter. Yeah, it was some. You
ruined my story, Karen. Vegan Gains pointed a gun at the camera.
Continue. Now that I've dropped that bomb,
okay.
Continue.
Vegan Gains has he's pulled a gun on camera too, and he's not in jail. So, okay. But anyway, and then they have this thoughtful conversation about how the drop of blood actually means that men can also have periods, and they should be able to use whatever bathroom they want, and that becomes a meaningful moment for them. And they take that away like, "Oh man, I'm so upset that I got mad at this, trans woman that wanted to use our bathroom." And I was like, or trans man. And I said, "You can't use it because you're a woman." You're like, that's like nothing, that would never happen. So anyway.
Also, this isn't like, listening to you say that, it occurs to me that this isn't about convincing men of anything.
No.
Not only is it a pointless thing in and of itself to even indicate your displeasure, but it was intended to just be mean. It's just intended to invade someone else's space and judge them. This is this is just dominance behavior. It's just a bully.
Yeah, it is. But I think I think it's more about, it's not, look, if she didn't have a Twitter account and the ability to share photos and make political statements, she wouldn't have done this. So this is actually more about being seen as virtuous while performing what she considers to be a great and courageous act of putting a drop of blood in a bathroom stall to make a point about, and essentially use men who are basically seen as, they're like the man, right? You're taking it to the man, and you want all your feminist friends to see it. That's all it is. It's just social media makes virtue signalers into these kinds of creatures. Like, they make people who are looking for social approval into this.
But I really
what I want to say.
What, Karen? Karen, what? Prince had something to say. Okay, go.
I really like what Alison was saying, though, because that was sort of my initial read of this, is that it is sort of a dominance behavior. Like, there is no actual point to this that is really being made. It's weaponized virtue signaling. It is somebody trying to pretend to be making a statement about some alleged misogyny that everybody knows doesn't actually exist. Like, I don't even think most feminists would probably see a point to this. But I think that the more potent action here is that, like, we can do this, we can get away with it, and we can even pretend we're sticking up for the little guy at the same time, and you just have to take it.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And like what I'd like to say too, right? In terms of, what goes on in female bathrooms. Like one of the things that drives me fucking crazy is hoverers, right? I don't know if Allison has come across them, but they're pretty common in nightclubs.
They piss all over the freaking seat.
Yeah, no, they hover over the seat because they don't want to put their ass on the seat. So they hover over the seat and then they splash piss all over the seat. Right? These are women, right? Women. And then they don't clean up after themselves, right? So then when you go in, you end up with your ass and your thighs wet, right? With somebody else's urine because you were stupid enough to not look and not take the pains to actually wipe off the seat, right? And it's like, you, the woman who was there before me, you did not want to sit in somebody else's piss. Okay, I can accept that. But what you could have done was just wipe off the seat and then not leave me with your piss to sit in, right? Like literally women are, and speaking as somebody who has been responsible for bathrooms, right? Women are much more disgusting in terms of leaving diarrhea splattered all over the bowl, plugging up the toilet with feminine products that they should not be flushing, right? And backing up the freaking sewer, leaving soap scum on the sink, leaving their hair on the sink, leaving lipstick and other kind of cosmetic traces all over the fucking place that are really difficult to clean off, right? The worst thing that I have ever encountered in a men's bathroom that I was tasked with cleaning was somebody left a freaking tomato slice in the freaking urinal.
But there's so often
wait. Okay, and then there was one guy in the town who was ill, and we found out who he was. One guy in the town who was mentally ill who would stand 1 foot to the left of the urinal and pee on the floor.
And all those poo swastikas.
There were no poo swastikas. All of the graffiti in the stalls, in the bathrooms of the restaurant that I was looking after, were all in the women's bathroom.
I'm not surprised.
What a twist.
Yeah. What a twist that the gender to whom we say you are automatically clean and good and wonderful and you have to change nothing.
Yeah,
You don't.
no,
You
it
no
was
criticism.
It was
There's
like,
no criticism.
it was like literally I never had to scrub off a so-and-so is a dirty fucking whore from the stall in the men's bathroom. But I had to repeatedly scrub that off the stall in the women's bathroom.
But was she?
Yeah. Prince is asking the real questions.
Yes, she was. But not that there's anything wrong with that. Okay? Not that there's anything wrong with being a dirty fucking whore.
She could be clean, though.
She could be a clean whore.
Well, no. Well, she could... honest whore. But I would expect that if a woman is writing that about another woman, she's writing about an honest whore.
She's probably a dirty whore writing about a clean whore.
All right.
Projection.
How are we doing on the fundraiser? Let me refresh the page and see if we've made any progress.
Oh man, I wonder when horror is going to become.
Well, we're already more than
speech.
50, more than halfway there, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, I should probably do some shout outs, but
Yeah.
I wonder when that word is going to become hate speech, even though it's a perfectly valid word. Like, is it hate speech or is it
Whore.
reclaiming it?
Whore?
Oh, I've
Yeah.
heard it described.
That's
I've heard it-
absolutely hate speech. What are you kidding? I mean,
Yeah.
Unless
There is an epidemic of gold digging whores out there, people.
Yeah.
And every night I watch the news and nobody's addressing it.
Actually, you know that I have something to say on that. I have something to say on that because Jonathan turned on the news yesterday, and I'm like, why would you even do that? But he turned it on, and we were watching the news for like 5 minutes, and I learned that there was a man who shot his family and I believe shot himself, and then there was another man who was in a mutual domestic with a woman and they both shot each other, and then there was another man who was in some sort of gang violence who shot some people. And I said to Jonathan, you realize that if they were reporting on this stuff honestly, they would have, for every, I guess about I think there were about 20 people died in total in all of this. For every one of those people, there would, or no, actually it was 4. I think 4 or 5 people died in total in all of these shootings. For every one of those people that died, there would be 20 men who committed suicide. So, in order to honestly report on the violence that men do, they would have had to spend probably about half an hour going through every single man who killed himself, one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other. And if they wanted to do any kind of like a little more memorandum, that would probably take well more than a half an hour to go through to even report on the few acts of violence. And I think, it would be really nice if, I know this will never happen, news will never be like this, but if they would be more honest about this and actually proportionately report on men's suicide relative to the times they take other people's lives. Maybe we could have like a guideline, a journalistic ethics guideline saying, let's be honest about our reporting. Every time a man dies, you should be, or a man kills someone, you should report on 20 men who killed themselves. But that's an aside.
But I want to know though, would that even make a difference to people? Because I don't actually think that it would. I think that it would further the emboldened, twisted feminist mind into saying, well, yeah, that's because they are violent and they shoot themselves. And if it wasn't for their violent toxic masculinity and their unwillingness to express their feelings, that they wouldn't have
I don't
done
really
it.
care.
Or they would have taken pills like a nice girl and not actually died.
Okay, first of all, I don't really care what an extreme feminist.
Or died, but not left a mess for somebody to clean up.
Yeah, but there's a significant amount of men who suicide using non-firearms. There's not that many men who use firearms. But regardless,
Good point.
I wanted to do a shout out to the people who have helped us out, helped Prim and pan out. Sorry. Also, I wanted to apologize to Chigozi. I think that is your real name, but people have been threatening to donate and use crazy names. So
Seen that person
I'm
around
sorry.
for years. So Chikoze
Let's not give the last name.
Is not Okoroji. It's just Okoroji.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. So I want to thank, I think Chikoze was the last one I did. Robert, who gives us $25. Samuel, who gives us 10. Luke, who gives us 10. Phil. Phil, huh? Wait a second. I'm going to get back to that. Nathan, who gives us $100. Meredith, who gives us 50. Joseph, who gives us 5. And let me just refresh because we have one pending. And Mitchell, who gave us $25. Thank you all. You're very generous. We're filling up that bar. Prim and Hannah are going to be eating well. They'll probably take this and well, actually, Hannah will probably use it to pay her house mortgage, but maybe Prim will be able to go out for a steak dinner or something.
No, she's got a baby, so she's probably it's gonna go right to the baby.
What? Babies can eat steak, right?
No,
just feed them.
Yes, babies can eat. Well, actually, what Prim should be doing is because her baby will be teething soon, and what she should be doing is she should be feeding herself and her husband prime rib. right? And then freezing the bones. Freeze the bones from the prime rib, and then when your baby is teething, take those frozen bones out and let your baby gnaw on the frozen bones, because the marrow is excellent for their health, right? The meat that's still attached to those bones is excellent for your baby's health, right? When they're teething. And the fact that it's cold and it's something that's big enough that your baby can't choke on, excellent freaking way to deal with teething is frozen prime rib bones. Do it, Prim.
Yeah, and so if you want to help Prim buy frozen prime rib bones for her baby, you can go to feedthebadger.com and throw a few shekels in the hat. Please do this, because we do want to get this fundraiser done for Prim and Hannah so that they can make radio and pay for frozen prime rib bones. Okay, Brian, let's go.
All right, so let's see how far we can get into this. So there were people who responded to her on Twitter. Trevor, I'm not going to read that. Beard Wizard Man says, by leaving a mess for a low-wage worker who has to clean both bathrooms and, depending on local policy, may now have to use special cleaners and spend more time. So brave of you. Duchess of Cinnamon, Anna D says, that's just sick. Wow, that's really robust. Yeah, whatever. I mean, like, people had opinions on this. There's Janet Jackson looking grossed out. And it says, this is a no for me. I dislike when people don't clean up after themselves in a bathroom. It's gross and inconsiderate of the people who use it after you. So when your virtue signaling backfires, I guess. I'm disgusted. Is that like the whole article? Okay, yeah. So sadly, Hart didn't seem to get the point and only attempted to make it seem as if the problem wasn't with what she did, but how everyone is lying about how outraged they are, blaming the reaction on white supremacy and sexism. Because white
supremacy have to do with the fact
Karen, SJWs always double down. That's all they know how to do. It's the only way they respond to anything. And she just needed some time to come up with a reason why white supremacy is the answer to this question.
Okay, is she literally saying that only white people clean up after themselves in the bathroom?
Well, here she says,
that would be like, really, if that was true.
She says,
right, that would be really like, I would consider that to be like a sign that, like, white people are superior because they actually know to clean up after themselves in the bathroom, right? So, yeah. Like, literally, if you're trying to convince other people that everybody's equal and everybody's equally capable and everybody's equally, like, socially responsible, I wouldn't say that the notion of cleaning up after yourself in the bathroom is white supremacy.
But toilet bowls are white. No, she says, this is what she says, okay? She says, with all the blowback she got, she says, now I see what also will cause so much stress other than talking about white supremacy, a little period blood.
Okay.
You don't care about people cleaning the bathrooms for low wages. You are just stressed about a little period blood. Be straight up. So, what? Yeah, it's like, look, we could analyze what she's saying. Okay, go ahead.
As a white person who had to clean up that kind of shit, right? I'm sorry, but I was a white person who had to clean up that shit, and I acknowledge that people of color are probably more likely to be in the position where they have to clean up that kind of shit. And nobody should have to clean up that kind of shit. Nobody should have to clean boogers from the sinks. Nobody should have to clean diarrhea that got sprayed all over the fucking bowl in the seat, right? Nobody should have to clean up menstrual blood all over the place. Nobody should have to clean up somebody else's freaking retarded freaking flushing of tampons or pads, right? Nobody should have to clean any of that up. That should be you, on you. You who dropped the blood, you who sprayed the diarrhea, you who hawked the loogie, you who fucking did that. That should be you. It's a public fucking space. Have some fucking respect.
Okay, so can I just complain about something else? Let me read the sentence again. Now I see what also will cause so much stress other than talking about white supremacy. A little period blood. Well, actually, with the construction of this sentence, I don't know. Is she actually an advocate of white supremacy? Because what she's saying is that talking about white supremacy causes stress, and talking
Well,
about a little bit of period blood causes stress. It's almost like she's comparing the two and saying that neither should, or
y-
something. Like the construction of this sentence is so bad.
no, what she's, I know, but I know what she's saying. It's sort of like saying, I'm bringing up something that I think is worth talking about, and all I see around me is male fragility because you can't handle what I'm talking about. And basically, what she's saying is, now I see the thing that will cause as much stress as talking about white supremacy for people who are white, right? So her talking about white supremacy makes white people nervous, anxious, upset, and she thinks it's because she's touching a nerve with them, and therefore she's winning the argument. And she's comparing a drop of period blood and how it affects, well, I guess, cis normative people, to talking about white supremacy around white people. That's what she's saying.
This is a terrible. Well, my point is that this is terrible sentence construction. Just like this entire protest is terrible.
Yeah, because she's a moron. Because she's a moron, and why does this article even exist? She's so fucking dumb.
I don't understand it. Like literally, I had to pick a tomato slice out of a urinal. That's what I had to do. A tomato slice out of a urinal. Why did I have to do it? I don't know. Because some fucking lunatic or some freaking shitposter, in real life shitposter, decided to put a tomato slice from his burger in the fucking urinal. Yeah, that's what we're gonna put in there.
It could have been a child, to be fair. It could have been like a child. Like a curious baby takes it and just throws it, They like to see, they're chemists, they just want to know what happens.
You know what's really interesting is that the all of the babies that went into the bathrooms in this place, because it was like essentially just the men's bathroom had one stall and one urinal, and the women's bathroom just had one toilet, right? And so anybody who was taking their baby into any of the bathrooms would take it into the women's bathroom. So I don't think it was a little kid. I think it was like some shit posting teenager, like somebody like my freaking 16-year-old, right? Who was like, oh, I'm going to take this tomato and I'm going to put it in the urinal and ha 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 ha. And
all right.
Whatever. But, okay. But what I'm looking at is a situation where you literally have women who are like, I should be able to deposit my bodily fluids on surfaces that other people are going to be using, right? And coming into contact with, and that should be absolutely 100% fine. And I'm like, it's like the free bleeding thing, right? And the free bleeding thing came from 4chan, right? It was like, oh yeah, no, just don't use pads, don't use tampons, just free bleed, just bleed into your freaking clothes and onto every freaking couch or sofa or chair or whatever that you sit on, stool that you sit on, just bleed onto that, and that should be fine. And you should proudly do that, right? And it was literally a joke by 4chan, and it got picked up by feminists. One of them ran a marathon in London while free bleeding, right? And they were like, yeah, we're totally on board with this. And it's like, this is a fucking biohazard. Why would you fucking... And people, feminists, said, well, if it's not a biohazard if they're healthy, it's as sterile as urine if they're healthy. Well, yeah, no, but if they have AIDS or hepatitis or fucking chlamydia or herpes or whatever, it's not fucking sterile, right? It's not just blood.
Do you really think this woman is going to respond well if people say you got to get your blood tested for diseases before you do your protest? She'll talk about misogyny and believe her and how women can't be held to any kind of standard. Essentially, that's what it means. But holding women to come some as misogyny, and it's
like literally, we have a situation where we have California defelonizing the intentional passing on of permanent sexually transmitted diseases like AIDS and herpes, like HIV and herpes, right? So they've downgraded that from a felony to a misdemeanor, right? If you intentionally have unprotected sex with somebody, right, knowing that you are HIV positive and that you could pass that on to this other person, and you do not disclose your HIV positive status, that is no longer a felony. It is now a misdemeanor.
Okay, this is an area of my expertise, and so that is in California, right? That bill was proposed by this notorious San Francisco politician named, get this, Scott Wiener, and he is this awful disgusting gay man. Like, you can look up pictures of him and he'll be at some fetish, like gay fetish type parade thing, and he'll be wearing a leather vest, and he looks very he has a six-pack, like his body is toned, but he also looks really, really sickly and disgusting. His name's Scott Wiener. Look it up. He's gross. And he pushed that bill, but he was also the big advocate for PrEP, which is the one daily pill that you take, which functionally works as a vaccine to the HIV virus. So if you're taking this, it's supposedly you can't get AIDS or HIV if you're taking this every day, except for that's not true. A number of people have gotten HIV at this point. They've last time I checked, it was something like 6 different people, and it's only been available since 2014. So the guy who really pushed for everybody to be on this chemical PrEP, and then you can have as much unprotected sex as you want, then he's also going on to say, you know what, maybe no one should get in trouble for knowingly transmitting HIV, because that might look bad. That might look bad.
It's like it's really freaking like I said, first responders, they use gloves, right? They use gloves because they don't know, right? And literally when I was in Toronto and I had my disagreement with walnuts, right? And ended up in the hospital in the emergency room, right? They brought in a guy who was he was found on the metro in Toronto at one of the stations with his pants down around his ankles, and he was screaming a whole bunch of profanities and threats at everybody around him. And they brought him in, and he was obviously on some kind of meth or something like that, right? Obviously on drugs. And one of the cops who was among the arresting officers, right? He ended up, and this guy, right, was in the bed right next to me, curtain between, but and I heard, like, he was obviously on something. He was out of his fucking mind. And the staff were being super kind to him, super nice, super like accommodating, and trying to allay his fears and all of that. And we're not here to hurt you, but you need to tell us, if you've been taking anything, blah blah blah, right? But one of the cops who brought him in had to go and get tested for HIV, for herpes, for hepatitis, for anything that could be communicable, because this guy spit on him. This guy spit on him. And now he has to go through a 6-month process of determining whether he is now saddled with some kind of permanent affliction. And he was not happy. He was not super happy about that. Right? And I'm listening to all of this going on, behind the curtain next to me. And I'm like, I don't fucking blame that freaking cop for being not happy about this, because you have this person, you have no idea. They're obviously a drug user, right? He was obviously a chronic drug user, intravenous drug user, and he spit on me. He spit on me and he tried to bite me. I think he bit the cop's arm. And now I've got to go through this freaking 6-month process to determine whether I'm going to be dealing with a life-altering affliction for the rest of my life. For the rest of my life. And it's like, these bitches who are like, oh yeah, no, we're just gonna drop our period blood wherever, right? I don't know you. You're the person who used the freaking bathroom stall before me. I don't know who you are. I don't know whether your period blood and your other blood and all of your other bodily fluids are free of some kind of pathogen, right? I have no fucking clue about that. I don't know, because I don't know you. So maybe you could refrain from spewing your bodily fluids all over a surface that I am also using. Like, what the fuck?
Pretty much. But of course, if you allude to the fact that women's bodily fluids aren't manna from heaven, you're holding women to a standard, which is misogyny. Okay, go ahead, Brian.
Let's even look at this scenario, right? Okay, male prostitutes, for the most part, right? They when they give head, right, to clients, to male clients, they use condoms, right? They're like, yeah, no, I'm not going to suck you off unless you wear a condom, right? But what male client of a female prostitute insists on using a dental dam or even cellophane, saran wrap?
That's actually a really good. If you go down on a woman who you aren't in a long-term relationship with and you have not done testing, you should use dental dams, because you can get.
No, you shouldn't use dental dams. You should use actually saran wrap
or something. It's just
Yeah,
essentially something.
saran wrap, because dental dams are, they're a pain in the ass to come by, and they are, and they, interfere with the sensation. But if you use plastic wrap, right, you're actually pretty protected, right?
Okay.
But if you don't know anything about this woman, Michael Douglas, he had throat cancer. You know how he got throat cancer? It wasn't from smoking. Throat cancer used to be an old smoker's disease, right? Throat and oral cancers. You know what it is now? It's a disease of young men under 50 who like to freaking go down on women.
Yep, and those women have hepatitis, or not hepatitis.
They don't have hepatitis. They have HPV.
Vaginas are literally cancer. Some.
No,
some
they
of
have
them.
HPV, and only girls in most jurisdictions, in most places, only girls are qualify for a free government-funded HPV vaccine for the 2 strains that cause cervical, vulval, and penile and oral and throat cancers. Only girls qualify for that to be paid for by the state, right? Boys do not. So you know what? And I literally had a friend, and she came, a friend who I worked with, right? She was 23 years old, and she came into work one day and she was just bawling her eyes out. She was so upset because she had just essentially she had gone to the funeral of a male friend of hers who was her age, 23 years old, right? And she said, I don't understand. I don't understand why he died, right? And I was like, what did he die of? And she said, throat cancer. And I was like, was he a smoker? And she said, no, he'd never smoked in his life. And I said, was he a generous lover? And she said, oh, yeah, no, he was just, you know. And I was like, well, that's what did him in. He was a generous lover. He liked to give oral sex. And one of the women he gave oral sex to had HPV 16 or 18, right? And that's how he got that cancer.
Yep.
Yeah.
So guys, make sure that you're protected as well. Of course, I can imagine the screeching when it's when it's recommended. When any man says, "Yeah, your vaginal fluids may not be manna from heaven, lady, that it may actually be cancerous." So I'm going to protect myself from them. I can hear just to be a fly on the wall when guys start saying stuff like that to women, because they will. Oh man, there's
How
nothing
dare
like
you? How
there's
dare you?
nothing like the feminine ego. Like when you tell a guy to wear a condom, it's just not. And you tell a woman that you're going to have to put something over over her lady bits for your own safety. Oh man.
Oh yeah, no, it's like it's absolutely completely different. It's like when you tell a man, I want you to wear a condom, not because I want to prevent pregnancy, because like I've said this to numerous guys, right? Because after I got my tubes tied well before I divorced, right? And then I dated after I divorced, and I told guys, yeah, no, you're gonna have to wear a condom. I can't get pregnant, but you're gonna have to wear a condom. Even the guy he was also fixed, right? He also had a vasectomy, so there was like no chance of pregnancy. And I was like, yeah, no, we're gonna have to use condoms until we are 100% exclusive, and we've both been tested, right? Okay, that's my line in the sand that I'm gonna draw. Right? Now, can you imagine if I had said to him, or he had said to me, right? Or one of the other two women he was dating at the time when we met and started being sexually engaged, right? If he'd said to either of these two women, yeah, actually, I'm gonna need to have a STD test results, or I'm going to have to put plastic wrap before I go down on you. Can you imagine? Can you fucking imagine?
Well, from what I've heard of the two women he was dating at the time, they would have probably maybe they probably would have walked out. Really?
One of them might have gone along with it because she was a submissive in a bondage dungeon and a burlesque performer, so she might have been like, okay, well, that's just par for the course. But the other one would have been
hugely offended.
Oh yeah,
that's the thing. Like when a woman says to a man, "I want you to wear a condom because of the potential of disease
to
transmission."
protect me from you.
Most men won't freak out and get offended at the thought that they might have a sexually transmitted
or the
disease.
woman, or not freak out at the fact that they might have, but they won't freak out at the fact that the woman doesn't necessarily trust them
Yeah.
and their word, right? They won't freak out over that, right? But a man who says that to a woman, at least that a woman like the nursing student and semi-pro model that my guy was seeing when he was with me, she would have been absolutely utterly offended at the idea that she might be carrying something that could possibly harm another person
or harm him specifically, really.
Yeah.
Or even the idea that the possibility that she could be harmful to him, it would be just offensive to her. I've seen this. It's the idea that a man could in any way be harmed by a woman is just very offensive. It's often offensive to men too. But I think people are desperate for us to move on. So let us do that. Are we done with this article? Is there anything more really to it?
I don't think there's anything else, but I would like to finish. But first, I should read the super chats because we did get more while this was going on. So Mr. Roboto gave us $5 and said, "Why is men can..." Now look, Mr. Roboto's sentences tend to look weird, so I'm just gonna read it as it's printed, and that's it. Why is men can just use the restroom, but females talk and form contracts and reapply makeup? Men don't want women because men's rooms are disgusting. Okay. The Great Indoor. Thank you for the $5, Mr. Roboto. The Great Indoors 1979 gives us €2 and says the toilet floor has come out as 10/24 red skinned. Get it? Because it's just a little spot of red in there. Probably more red skinned than Pocahontas was Native American, to be honest. The Great Indoors gives us another €2 and says walnuts destroy Karen Strawn with facts, reason, logic, and evidence. I just added that on. Okay, so I just wanted to add, Prince of Queens, is this the guy? I put him on the screen. Is this the guy that you were talking about? Okay. Yeah, he looks like a vegan that probably like consumes quite a lot of soy. So anyway, and this is a politician of where? Where is this guy? Where does he operate?
San Francisco.
Oh yeah, of course.
You have to ask?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I suspected that, but I needed to double check.
That's probably Folsom Street, and he's probably at the Dory Alley Fair, which is the gay Folsom Fair, which is a kink festival that you can go to in San Francisco. And then the Dory Alley one, which is an alley that goes off of Folsom, is the actual gay Folsom parade. Like, there actually needed to be one. So
sure, of course. Okay. So yeah, going back to the article. So thank you for that interesting bit of trivia about that guy. This isn't the first time that feminists have left body fluids lying around in protest of the patriarchy or misogyny. What's the difference? During the high-profile abortion debate in Texas, feminist protesters were forced to hand over tampons as well as containers of urine and feces before they entered the Capitol. In 2018, feminists threw urine and feces at pro-life demonstrators. Oh.
What? Oh my God, they were forced to hand over?
Well, there's two other instances. So there was a debate in Texas. Hold on. This is from the Political Ticker. I'm not going to read the whole article. Feminine hygiene products among items confiscated at Texas Capitol. So I guess they were coming in, they got stopped at the door, and they took their used feminine products.
Used.
Yeah, used.
No, like this is not just like freaking throwing OB tampons or like freaking maxi pads in their wrappers at the stage. No, this is just like I have a purse full of freaking used feminine fucking products. Impregnated with blood, and vaginal secretions, right, and a degree of urine, right, and I'm bringing them in my purse because I plan on throwing these at the speakers. Like what? Like how is this a fucking problem?
How is this not a problem?
How is it not? The people
this is chimp logic.
Trying to smuggle this shit in.
And also, why are these people not being charged with something like endangerment or assault or attempted murder?
Well, they might have. I mean,
No, well, they were
Guaranteed they weren't.
No, the stuff was confiscated at the door, I guess. In this particular case, they were throwing. I guess they planned on demonstrating using used tampons and maxi pads. Here's a guy, a soy boy named Jamil Smith, who says. He's a journalist, blue check mark. He says, if considering guns to be safer than tampons doesn't sum up at Rick Perry's Texas right now, I don't know what does. Wow, just wow. Yeah, so
the issue is
I'm pretty sure they stopped. If people are going in there with guns, they probably got to stop too. I mean, come on. But that didn't happen.
The issue is even if they let people in with guns, which they might, right? Utah University, right, at the Anita Sarkeesian thing, right? They were like, we're not going to divest people of their guns. It's an open carry state. It's, people have the right to carry arms, right? And we're not going to divest them of their arms to accommodate your feelings, okay? But here's the difference, is that if I pull out a gun and open fire at an event, every single bullet can be attributed to me. Right? But if me and 30 other people start lobbing used tampons at somebody and then they get freaking some kind of disease and die 10 years later, it's a little bit more freaking complicated. Right? Like literally a gun is something that is obvious in the moment. People will tackle you, right? People will tackle you, bring you to the ground. Bystanders will intervene and freaking try to stop you, right? And the bullet that leaves your gun and hits that person, there is a direct line of causality between what you did and what the outcome was, right? But when it comes to like lobbing tampons at people, right, that have been in your vagina, nobody fucking knows whether that's dangerous or not. And why would you have that? You don't have that because you want to be able to defend yourself, right? No. The only reason you can have that, why you would want to bring that in, is so you can throw it at the freaking people on the stage.
Okay, I'm going to get in here.
Have that.
Get in here, and I'm going to thank some people and do another call out. Stalled a bit on getting in donations. I want to thank Dale. He gives us 50. Christopher gives us 5. Guys, let's do this. Let's make sure that Prim and Hannah are covered for this month because they do good work. They are probably some of the kindest of us, Brian, Prim, and Hannah, probably the kindest among us. I think Karen would qualify as the most crusty.
We're close. Yeah. We're only 40% more, and we'll be there.
I won't object to you putting a film of plastic wrap between you guys and my crusty.
Yeah, I think I'll probably put like 9mm. What do they call it? Whatever they make those inflatable items with. It's a fairly thick kind of rubber. It's not usually rubber though. It's like it's some sort of chemical name that is not coming to me right now.
Latex.
So, latex. Yeah, latex will work. Yeah, a 9mm latex sheet that'll be sufficient.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. But be that as it may, and I know this is a terrible segue, but I'm doing my best. Go to feedthebadger.com. Put some money in the hat. Let's get this done. We are very close. As Brian said, we are 40% away. That's great. Done good work, but let's bring this home. So go to feedthebadger.com. Every little bit counts. And I'd like to add a little wrinkle to all of this. In the fundraiser, if you go to the description, I do have links to subscriptions. Or if you go to the description of the fundraiser, I have links to subscriptions, and you can subscribe to Prim's HBR Health or Hannah's HBR Talk, and that will give them monthly income for doing those 2 shows. So you can either give us a one-time donation, or you can support them monthly, And you can do that by clicking either Pay Prim or Pay Hannah in the description of the fundraiser. And that's a real big help if you decide to just subscribe monthly for their shows. Because and if you do that, I will take your first month subscription, whatever you pledge for the first month and every other subsequent month, and I will apply it to this fundraiser. So it will increase this fundraiser as well. So please do consider that. It's another option. If you're ready to make the commitment to Prim or to Hannah and make them say, you know, I really like your work, I want to support you monthly in doing it, then do that. Consider that as an option, or go and put $5, $10 in the hat. We love it all. So thank you.
And just to say that Prim and Hannah are much more responsible and dedicated people than I am. So
yeah, they do a lot of work. Hannah in particular.
Put in a lot more. They put in a lot more effort. You know.
Oh yeah.
Putting out content, they put in a lot more than I do at this point, and so yeah, you should absolutely support them 100%.
All right, thank you, Karen. Brian, let's bring this.
I'm trying. If you guys would shut up for a minute.
I'm not blaming you.
Okay, so we got some super chats again. Egregious Charles gives us $2 and says biological warfare, it's a war crime. And General Jack Ripper gives us $10 and says, Allison, read this. And then there's more I'm not going to read because he wants you to read it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy it and paste it into the chat here so that you can read it. Do you see it?
Who sent this?
General Jack Ripper gave us a $10 super chat and asked that you read that.
Okay, I am Allison Tiemann, and my old nemesis just made me read this super chat.
Oh, I don't know who General Jack Ripper is.
Yeah,
okay.
You're gonna have to give me another super chat to indicate what we fought over, General Ripper.
Who knows?
I remember vaguely,
bullshit.
but not really great with names.
Mr.
Okay.
Roboto gives us $2 and says, sorry for super chats. I am at work often. Don't worry, it's fine. Thank you so much for what you guys are doing. It helps. I want to briefly go back to the story to see the other instance where they actually did throw bodily fluids at people. So apparently there were some pro-lifers that were outside of an abortion facility, protesting, no doubt, probably peacefully. Maybe they had, gross photos of various clumps of cells in various stages of abortion. Who knows? But apparently, this was where was this? And let's see, Santa Cruz. I'm just gonna try not to. Okay, here's an article on LifeSite News. 2 pro-lifers who attended a pro-abortion demonstration describe what happened to them. Pro-life activist Lauren Metz says, quote, of course it was a woman because most people who are pro-life are women, but we were screamed at, called names, spit on, sexually harassed, and censored by the covering of our signs. A male feminist called me his piece of shit, and worse, he got within an inch or so of my face, continuing his harassment, exclaiming that he did not want to talk to me, he only wanted to harass me. At one point, a middle-aged woman walked up to one of the 4 female volunteers, and while reaching towards her groin, aggressively and repeatedly said, "Can I grab your pussy?" Something that Trump himself did not do, but this person thought would be appropriate for some reason. While I definitely did not encourage this, young people began to curse our picketers, several of whom had buckets of urine and worse thrown at them as they prepared to listen to a group of smiling young people who seemed to have slowed to tell them how much they supported what they were doing. He said he was so angry that he poured urine from the second floor window onto the demonstrators below. It was childish behavior on his part. Not even a child would do that. That's actually like chimp behavior, but whatever. But he had reached his limit. Since pregnancy tests were done on the first morning samples of urine, clinics had a ready supply of urine. So this actually came from a nurse anesthesiologist in an abortion facility. So it wasn't protesters that poured it. It was in this particular case, it was actually someone who worked at the abortion facility who did that. So that was that's just sort of like two other examples of people using bodily fluids for activism, and surprise, surprise, they're feminists, because feminists are obsessed with gross body fluids. And somebody commented that this image of Janet Jackson is from a movie called Poetic Justice. I know that because I've seen Poetic Justice and I can prove it. Janet Jackson's jeans are tight as fuck in this movie. Okay, so anyway, that's basically it for this. If anybody wanted to say anything else on anything else.
No, I'm done with this article. Let's go to the Vice one.
All right, yeah, it's disgusting. Okay, so let's go on to the next article.
Hopefully this will be the end about talking of any kind of bodily fluids of any color, description, or consistency.
Especially red.
Yes. Let's be done with that now.
All
okay.
Right. Okay, so I think there's another super chat here. No, there isn't. Okay. The men's liberation movement that time forgot. This is kind of long, so I don't know if we're going to get through the whole thing, but early last year, in the thick of the hashtag #MeToo maelstrom, my boyfriend offhandedly said to me, quote, men need consciousness raising groups, end quote. Rape and harassment were dominating the news cycle. It had never been clearer that even dudes we know and love might be abusers. And yet, conversations about it with his guy friends were stilted, brief, and rarely personal. Men needed a space among other men they trusted to address their own hostility towards women, he argued, however latent, where they could work out the ways the patriarchy was hurting them too, where they could really talk about their feelings. He wished there was a way to demand more engagement among men, to push them further than just smiling, nodding, and continuing to do whatever they wanted in their personal lives. Because apparently men should not be allowed to do whatever they want in their personal lives. And even though I love men, I am afraid that they're hurting people because they're really bad people. Have you guys seen? Okay. That reminds me of something. I'm sorry. I want to, before you comment on this, have you guys seen that video you did, Alison, that was shared? It was a Swedish politician, and she was talking about. I'm going to put it on the screen. It was on my Twitter, and I just got to find the original tweet here. Voice of Europe. Swedish far-left MP declares war on all men. And she said, I'll just put it here so you guys can see it. There is no audio. I mean, there's audio, but it's not important. She says, because we cannot look at you and see whether you are a rapist or not. This is what it reminds me of. We must assume that all men are rapists. Because you can't, obviously. That is the brutal truth. That is how a structural problem looks like. That is why men must take their collective responsibility.
So because a minority.
Men. Yes.
So because a minority of men are extremely damaged to the point where you can detect these men using an MRI machine. So you can put them in a tube, scan their brain, and you can see how they're different than other normal men. The men that engage in these kinds of violence acts. Because there is a small minority. I mean, you could even conceivably, probably the differences are greater than that between trans woman and a man. And yet these guys are lumped in with all men, and all men need to take responsibility for these anomalous, damaged individuals. And she is saying that this is some kind of institutional thing because some men engage in violence, some damaged men engaged in violence, all men are responsible for it and need to be punished for it. And that's what it really means when she says all men need to take responsibility for the behavior of some men. She means that all men should be subjected to her control because of the behavior of some men. And of course, this never applies to any other group of people. This doesn't apply to government should have greater control over men than women because they're men, is essentially what she's saying. Government should be able to legislate men's free time and their mental activity because they're men. This is what she's saying. but no other group would be subject to this. No other group. Certainly not women. We can't say, well, because women are actually more likely to engage in child abuse, they should be subject to government oversight. And nobody would say that. Women should be judged by the minority of bad apples among them, and all women should be subject to the kind of constraints that criminal women are subject to. This is essentially what she's saying. All men should be subject to the kind of constraints that criminal men are subject to, because they happen to share a sex. It's abhorrent. Okay, go ahead, Prince.
If we were going to be fair, I think it would be women are more likely to lie a lot, so the police should always be able to go through their email and Facebook messages every single day if they want.
Are you still there?
Did you drop, Prince?
Yeah. Oh, Prince? Did you hear me?
Did you hear? Yeah, that you were saying.
We're having the echo issue again.
That's coming from Karen. Go ahead.
I was just saying that the way a similar thing to say to females would be that due to the fact that women are a lot more likely to make up damaging lies, then police force should have access to their emails and Facebook messages at all times, just in case they're making something up and you could prove it.
Well, it's deeper than just police having access to their emails when they make any kind of accusation. This is all men doing nothing. Like this is a man just sitting in his house feeding his cat that has to be subject to constraints, some kind of constraint, because there are men who rape. That's essentially what she's saying. So it's not even a situation where this man is actively doing anything at all, much less making a false accusation.
But I'm saying the parallel would be something to the effect of women
having to be all the time.
Women that not making false accusations, just always monitored, always having every one of their communications monitored, perhaps by a male guardian. God damn it!
Oh, that's Sharia.
So what? We live in reverse Sharia?
No, we live in an actual Sharia. It's just a Sharia in which women have no accountability or responsibility. It's all of the aspects of Sharia that constrain men are there, and none of the aspects of Sharia are there.
Karen, can I get you to leave and come back? Just to maybe that will resolve the echo. All right.
Okay, so I'm going to continue. Next paragraph. At the same time, the notion seemed impossible to imagine. Most people publicly talking were women, many saying a version of, quote, shut up and listen, end quote. Yep, that's true. With most men following suit and paying the consequences when they ran their mouths. Wow, that's surprisingly woke. But it turns out a men's movement, like the one my boyfriend imagined, did exist in some form back when second wave feminism was first starting to gain steam. For a handful of years in the 1970s, there was a minor but visible men's liberation movement. Unlike the modern men's rights movement, they were ostensibly in favor of women's liberation and forced allegiances with prominent feminists, though their intentions remained diffuse and difficult to decipher. Men's liberation groups formed at a specific time in American history when radical energy was in the air. The concept of authenticity was the highest form of enlightenment, and men across the country were confronted with their newly liberated wives and girlfriends. Okay, you guys can respond to the paragraph. First thing I like to say is just be aware of the clever, well, I wouldn't even say it's clever, but the obvious misunderstanding of the current men's rights movement when they say, unlike the modern men's rights movement, they were ostensibly in favor of women's liberation and forged alliances with prominent feminists.
Yeah, I think that there's probably a little bit of a redefinition of women's liberation going on when they say such a thing, when they talk about the men's rights movement. Though, granted, they would never even pay lip service to the things that the men's rights movement now talks about. But I think that they would have to be redefining what women's liberation means in order to paint a picture that MRAs are opposed to that. Now it's like MRAs are opposed to absurd domestic violence laws and kangaroo courts. Don't you know those things liberate women?
Yeah. Title IX.
Well, I wanted to talk about a bit more of everything that we've read. First of all, this is my first point. What this woman wants is hot ice, because there is no place where men will talk to each other that she will ever allow to exist. Even if all they're saying is we need to resolve our hostility to women. And incidentally, what they mean by hostility to women is recognizing them as individual moral actors that can make moral choices. So what they mean is these men have to have consciousness raising to erase women's individuality in their mind. And that's really, it's interesting. But the problem is that she would never allow men to even have a space to do that, because that would involve men getting together and talking to each other, which is a sin in her religion. And I just wanted to point out that none of this is proven. None of the assertions that she's made is proven. It's not proven that men have hostility towards women. In fact, the surveys that I've seen indicate that men don't, that they hold women in high regard. It's women who have hostility towards men. And there's no indication that there is a patriarchy, i.e., a society that prefers to prioritize men for protection and provision over women. There's no evidence that that exists. So these are two assertions that she has no evidence for. And furthermore, there's another one, that when men talk about their hostility to women and the way the patriarchy hurts them, that they're actually really revealing something about their emotions. It's actually difficult for men to talk about how women hurt them. It's why it's difficult for men to confess to being abused by women or raped by women or anything by women, sexually assaulted by women. It's extremely difficult for men to talk about these things. It's extremely difficult for men to cast women in the villain role in their lives. It's why, and even feminists will recognize that men have difficulty talking about these things, but then turn around and say that men have a latent hostility towards women, when men can't even express it, when women are violent and hateful towards them. They can't even express their pain because of that. So what emotions is she talking about when she says they're getting real and authentic about their feelings? Bullshit. They're just putting up another face of being useful to women. In this case, being useful is perpetuating that ideology. But then we come back to that same problem. That ideology cannot tolerate any space where men talk to each other that is not absolutely controlled by feminist women, which is why they're always shouted down. Men are always shouted down. And so this individual wants hot ice from men, essentially. And she's also basically lying about reality. Oh, man.
Yeah, as usual. And
well, as usual.
Yeah, as usual, asking for the impossible. Oh, and also, by the way, she doesn't even give, or the person who's written this article, which I assume is a woman. Yeah, Nona Willis R. something. She doesn't even give the old men's liberation movement, which was basically a feminist movement for men. She doesn't even give them full credit. She says that their intentions remained diffuse and difficult to decipher. That means they're men, so they're probably up to something. We just haven't figured out what it is. So imagine today we have movements like this for men. They're like the Good Man Project. They are some of these sort of mythopoetic men's movements, which, you know, they're not really interested in actually helping men. They're more about helping men be better men in service of women. So they're feminist men, essentially. So imagine if you're a part of those groups and feminists are still suspicious of you. Like, what is the point of trying to appease these people when you should just be taking care of yourself and people because like men and women because you care about them, not because you're trying to fit in to their crazy religion. Go on, Prince.
Well, also because feminists hate male feminists. They can't stand it. They feel like they're completely worthless. They feel like they're dishonest. Half the time they end up being creepy and rapey and committing domestic violence. And when you're around such a person, you might not have a proper diagnosis for what created the problem or be able to even articulate what exactly is wrong with this person. But a duplicitous, weak man who's likely to lash out randomly and freak out due to his own just completely innate misunderstanding of his actual hostility towards women. And maybe he is trying to get over that, but he's going about solving the problem by, it's like the problem probably with a lot of these guys is feminism, and the solution is more feminism.
Yep.
And so like these guys end up being all just weird, and then the women hate them even more, but they're like, maybe throw more feminism on the feminism fire.
The thing is that male feminists are useful in that for cannon fodder, essentially in the same way that men have been useful to women throughout history. They just weaponize them. That's what Antifa is, right? All of the men that are attacking women on the streets and other men that don't agree with them politically or just don't want to have an opinion, those are the foot soldiers of the feminists that run those organizations, and they are run mostly by women. So they don't like male feminists. That's why they're willing to use them.
Okay, so I just want to something occurred to me. This is really interesting that this was said by a man to his girlfriend. It's almost like he wants to develop a fraternity with other men or bond with other men over their mutual villainousness towards women. So he's trying to bond with other men over this shared hatred of women, except that it's bad. And I can't imagine a more socially awkward reason to bond. Like, could you not like step it back a bit and try to bond with your bros over like fossilized rodent poo? Like your carefully classified collection of rodent leavings, perhaps? Like that might be a little bit more or less disturbing than trying to bond over other men over trying to resolve your hatred of women. Like, I mean, how do these conversations start? Like, Simon, we were going to go out and do some rock climbing this weekend, but instead, I think we should stay and go to a coffee shop and discuss how we both hate women, and we should overcome it together and bond through that. Like, does anybody else find this both sort of sad, but also like sad but
yeah,
sort of,
sure. I mean, like, I would imagine
I feel sort of bad for this guy.
Yeah, but I would imagine that a man who is this girl's boyfriend probably, again, he just wants to bond with guys to talk about toxic masculinity together. So it's not like even if he was allowed to do it, it would do any good. It would just like add to the fucking problem. But I don't really know for sure. All I can do is speculate. I mean, I can't even know for sure that she has a boyfriend and she didn't just make this person up, because they make up a lot of these fucking stories. And a lot of times this is all full of shit that never happened. So it's hard for me to believe it anyway. They just try to find a way to talk about the thing they want to talk about.
And how is this men's consciousness raising? So they're raising their consciousness to believe that, or to identify how they hate women in their lives.
That's it. That's what it is, for sure. That's why they go back to the beginning. He says, it's never been clearer that even dudes we know and love might be abusers, and yet conversations about it with his guy friends were stilted, brief, and really personal. So basically, she's working from the assumptions that even people that she knows and loves, they're probably abusers somewhere. They're doing bad things when I don't know what they're doing. That is the assumption works from men are bad. And even the men I know that I love, that I feel close to, they're bad too. And I want to save them from their own masculinity.
Yeah, and I'm sure the whole premise is also one big Kafka trap in that, like they're gonna say, "Oh yeah, you hate women. Why do you hate women?" And then they say, "Well, actually, I don't really hate women." And they're gonna be like, "That is exactly what a woman hater would say."
Yeah. That's
That's
something that's something that a fascist would say. Yeah, exactly.
And also, why can't you hate women? Like, women are okay. Is it okay to hate men? If it's okay to hate men, why is it not okay to hate women? Seriously, I'm really fucking tired of this.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well,
why is this a problem?
The only reason why you would accuse someone of hating women is if the idea of hating women is so abhorrent to them that if they hear that they hate women, they want to respond to it. So the only people that can be accused of hating a gender are the people who, and they actually would affect them in a way that to get them to do what you want, are people who don't, in their nature, hate that gender. That's why I don't think that. I think that there are very, 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 very few men that actually hate women. Very few.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Very,
Even
very,
when
very
there's
few.
cause to. Even when there's cause to, there are very few.
Yeah, because it's, biologically hardwired into us not to be. Like I'm a gay man has been around a whole lot of crazy women in my life. Like I out of all of the close relationships that I've had with female family members and good friends, I can most of them ended up being like, I came to the realization in my mid 30s when I started fully red pilling myself that like all of them were completely abusive. Like they were horribly psychologically, emotionally abusive people that lied to me constantly and got what they would out of me at any given time. And so I have every reason to hate women. It'd be easy for me, and yet still I don't. And still I have inherent kinship to women, at least ones that I kind of like. Like your guys' show was like one of the first things I really found on YouTube when I was red pilling myself, and it was this great thing for me because it's like, oh, women talking about this, I somehow feel more comfortable with this because and that's just my I think that is an innate characteristic in my being. I don't know if I have Stockholm syndrome, who knows, but I do think it's mostly the biological thing.
Well, let's put it this way. Men's identity centers around being useful to somebody who is not a man, which by necessity either has to be elders, which is reasonable, or women or children. That's the essence of the male identity. Being a man is being able to protect and provide for people who are not men, or even men who are injured. So that the idea that men have a great deal of trouble actually generating a legitimate level of hostility towards those people that they are defined as protecting and providing makes a lot of sense. And of course somebody will say, but what about those men who get, well, they are damaged. Like, seriously, would you, and I have not using this to cast shade on men who don't have limbs, but would you say that a man who doesn't have legs defines all men's ability to walk? No, it's
No,
ridiculous.
but that guy needs to like that. We need to give Sekiro needs the easy mode for that guy, but otherwise, no.
Yeah, we don't say that men who are dealing with disabilities define normal men. And yet men who are dealing with damaged brains that cause them to have low self-control and engage in violence somehow define all men. That's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. It's absurd. It's something that should never have even been stated. So now when we're just talking about normal men find it incredibly difficult to develop hostility towards those people that they feel that their very existence is providing and protecting for, that they exist to provide and protect for. It's and only in a society where men's identities are structured in that way could you develop something like feminism that relies on the fact that men's identities are structured around protecting and providing for women to even function, even as it points to men and says, you all are sinners. You defy this. You hate women. Well, hating women is so counter to men's nature that they will actually do shit when you tell them, if you don't do this, you hate women. If you don't do this thing, if you don't pass this law, you'll hate women. They pass the law. If you don't invade this country, you hate women. They invade this country. I mean, this can only occur in a society that loves women and wants to provide for and protect them. It's the only kind of society that can be motivated by saying, well, there's a sinner who hates women underneath this rock. There's a sinner who hates women underneath every rock and behind every door. Only in a society that hates drug abuse or drug use could we create something like reefer madness. Only in a society that hates heathens could we have Christian witch hunts like this. Like it doesn't, this whole thing falls apart when you realize that the only reason it exists is because our society can't stand the thought that women are hated at all. Then it will spend money. And it can't stand the thought that men have any unfair benefit. So it'll spend money on entire academic departments and government organizations to try to hunt down any place where men appear to hate women or any place where they appear to benefit unfairly. Like, what do you think the wage gap is? It's this constant belief that men are benefiting unfairly somewhere. Just like a fundamentalist Christian believes that people are sinning somewhere. They got to go find it. Our entire society is geared around finding those places where men must be accruing some unfair benefit to themselves. And you're telling me this is a society that hates women and doesn't want to benefit them? It's a society that so absolutely wants to benefit women that it will squeeze out every last drop of benefit for them. And it will go to great lengths to find it and take it from men, even if it isn't unfair at all. Even if it is only because those men are expected to do the work of running society so they get some concessions so they can do it. Society will hunt them down and try to take that benefit away and give it to women. It's getting really, and it got so tiring looking at this insanity that eventually I had to take a huge step back and try to see the context in which it made sense. Okay, I'm done.
All right. I'm going to go on to the next paragraph. If that's okay, let me just check. I have a super chat here. Anth Bobo gives us $2 Canadian. Thank you, Anth, and says, I don't hate women. I just hate their brains. Okay. Cool.
That's funny.
It's pretty funny. Okay, so let's also check just to make sure that we're not that we didn't get another donation here. Yeah, we got some more donations, and I also have another super chat. Let me just read that real quick, and then you can give the shout outs. Shout outs. So Miles Kinslow gives us $10 and says, "Hey guys, do you think MGTOW can open another identity to men like feminism outside of family? You mean a kind of MGTOW identity?" Yeah, absolutely. It's funny that you should mention that. I just wanted to say something I'm trying to do, and I don't know if I'll be able to, but one thing I wanted to do for the ICMI, we want to do panel discussions, right? And one of the things I'm hoping to do is have a panel discussion with one MGTOW, one MRA, and one PUA, and have them all sit down and talk about where we can intersect, where we where we have the same goals, because I think that there is some value in both what PUAs talk about and what MGTOW talk about to men on a personal level for their personal growth, right? And I don't like the idea of, personally, I don't like the idea of constantly playing damage control whenever feminists write an article about MRAs and they use MGTOW MGTOW posts, or most of the time they use PUA talking points to like sort of slander the MRM. And I don't know what, individual PUAs out there might say that are things that we can't agree with, but I'm tired of essentially like separating, doing what we can to separate ourselves from them, because I do think that PUAs and MGTOW both have things to offer to men. And I think that there's value in it. But I think that in some ways there are, let's say there are blind spots in both of those, I wouldn't say ideologies, but in both of those ways in which men express and react to their red pilling. And I think that that's the reason why I'd like to do that. But the problem is that while I haven't had a problem like with MGTOW coming, I can't get the attention of PUAs. They actually, they kind of look down on us, and they think that what they're doing is the best thing. But I don't take it personal. I just find it funny. Incels, I don't know that. Richard asks, no incels. I don't see incels as a movement or a group. That's the only reason why it didn't occur to me to include them. It's not like there couldn't be an incel MRA or an incel MGTOW or something, right? So even an incel PUA that just hasn't been successful yet. Okay, but go ahead, Prince of Queens. What your thoughts?
I was gonna say about the PUAs is that I had a live stream with one guy who was a PUA who seemed very well. Like he went on and played a bunch. I think it's on my live stream to take a look at it.
Okay.
And the thing is that it didn't sound like the PUA movement or whatever is even actually so much about men's rights or
no, they're not.
Yeah, it really seemed from what he was saying basically as a coaching mechanism for helping guys get what they want out of relationships with women, which could include actual dating, but usually includes negotiating ways to have short-term relationships that are actually, it didn't start out like this necessarily, but they actually incorporate, like how do you negotiate a one-night stand with a woman in a way that she will know what she's getting into and be fine with it. And that sounds very, very different than what MRAs do. So I think people should maybe look into that aspect of it. So
Yeah, but unfortunately, feminists are closing down all of the loopholes that pickup artists can actually use to keep themselves safe in these sexual relationships.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I think it's good to do this, because I don't really care what tactics you have as a PUA, but in this current climate, if you're not prepared for, it doesn't even have to be feminists. They've basically like sowed so much fear in regular women, especially younger women, which are the women that, PUAs want to hook up with, that I don't think you can just go into this with this naive kind of, well, I have game to, that's going to protect me from, like, you gotta get real. And I know that there are people who would say that the PUAs, despite the fact that they're responding to a red pill knowledge, they are still very blue pill in a way. I agree. I think that there's a lot of purple pill guys out there that are pickup artists. But what my point is that I care about men in general. I don't care if they're PUAs, MGTOWs, male feminists. I honestly do. I want to help them, and I think that a lot of times, men that were male feminists when you met them, when you were friends with them, and then you start doing this kind of content, and then you have conversations with them, and they wake up to what they've been a part of this whole time, and they find a way to make their lives better. And I think that I think that the MRM has a lot to share and to give to MGTOW as well as PUAs. And I also think that those other groups can learn something from the others. I don't think there's something like, that's unique to the MRM. I think that MGTOW have some stuff that I think is of value to PUAs and MRAs. And I think that PUAs have stuff that's of value to MGTOW as well as MRAs. So those are my thoughts anyways.
All right. So
agreed.
I'm going to do some... did you want to say anything more?
No.
Okay, I want to do some shout outs. Christopher gives us $5. Miles gives us 25, and Michael gives us 5. And there's another Michael that gave us 50 through the Feed the Badger link at the front of the page. And I would like to really encourage people to do this because we are stalling out, and I'd really like to get this done. We only have about $300, $355, I think, dollars left to make sure that Hannah and Prim have some extra, to help out. And especially this is going to be helpful for Prim because she has a new baby, and Hannah because she has managed to actually be able to purchase a house, her first house. So if you could please go to feedthebadger.com and put some shekels in the hat. They do really good work, and I really want to get this done. So, go there, do it, get it done. Let's do this.
Let's get it done.
I know
we
you
gotta
can.
we gotta
I
be
know you
more.
guys can.
We gotta be more efficient and entertaining, and I think we will. So next paragraph. Let me just make sure there's no super chats.
www.feedthebadger.com. Yes, go read the super chat.
Thanks for the donation, Miles Kinslow. That was basically what I was talking about, was your super chat. So thank you so much for that. All right. 50 years later, the closet we have. Wait, what? Oh, the closest. 50 years later, the closest we have to widespread men's consciousness raising sessions are in the annals of incel subreddits, men going their own way forums, and YouTube comment threads under Jordan Peterson videos. Many of them oozing with anger, resentment, and sometimes violence towards women. How the fuck is a conversation violence towards women? Obviously, we know that feminists and leftists believe that words are violence. Therefore, they would consider them to be violence because rhetoric is dangerous. That's why they love censorship, and that's why they respond to words with violence. So
I also love. Wait, I just have to insert.
Prince, you dropped.
Yeah.
Oh, there you are.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I love the way that the no platforming of YouTubers that is in corporate media, like they're so obsessed with finding ways to just, completely not have people watching all of our channels, that they have boiled down Jordan Peterson as this single speaker on all of YouTube. That is, it's like,
yeah, because all they see is power. Jordan Peterson is very, very popular, so they think he's the most powerful. And they hate it. They hate it when men find a place to get together and be a part of something. It doesn't matter what it is. They hate it when they're a part of something. That's why they also that's why they don't like male feminists getting together, because if they can't manage or monitor what they're doing, it makes them nervous. They think that those men must be planning to kill all the women, even their allies. Yeah.
No, it's not that. It's not that the men are plotting to kill the women or their allies. It's that men are developing some kind of immunity to their control, to be honest. They don't want men to actually develop an immunity to this. And I would say that Jordan Peterson, at least in terms of what I've heard from him on YouTube, is not really that functionally distinct from any other voice that tells men to cope with the vagaries of life by being useful. And I mean, that's one way to develop skills to cope, true, but that's the only way that our society tells men to be able to cope with trauma, is to just try to man up and be useful. And when you tell that to men, you don't give them the skills that they need to get over certain things. So I would actually not say that Jordan Peterson is, and I mean, he has a different persona when he's sort of dealing with censorship issues, and I'm fully behind that. But I think that a lot of his work in helping young men to cope, while valuable, I think it's missing a component that would really put him under the umbrella of a men's rights activist. So
yeah, but they don't care about that. That's why they just say incel subreddits and men going their own way, and Jordan Peterson, as though those things are in any way connected. The only way they are is it's a place where men are at, where it's mostly men. That's the only way it's connected.
I think that paragraph is a little bit more calculated in the way that I think that they know perfectly well that the dramatic Jordan content and discussion happens on YouTube. That, that is the most thriving thing, that there is all sorts of MRA videos go out that get, thousands and thousands of views. And but they don't want people to know about these things. And so they kind of know that everybody's heard of Jordan Peterson by now because he's basically completely mainstream.
Yeah.
And so they just sort of, throw the whole weight of the MRA internet onto him to avoid actually mentioning it.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, I'm gonna just do one more call out, guys.
All right.
Just $5. Put it in the hat. We got to get this moving. It's it's been a while, and I know you guys can do it. And please do, because I don't want to leave Hannah and Prim hanging. So please do put some money in the hat. I want to be able to go back to them with a win, not with a loss. And that's really up to you to do. So go to feedthebadger.com, and even $5, $10 helps us out a great deal. So don't not go because you're like, oh, I can't give that much. Every bit counts, and I don't want to fail this. So please do go to Feed the Badger and help us out. All right.
Okay.
What's the next paragraph?
Well, I'm not finished with the current paragraph. So anyway, so while the rhetoric of today's groups, by the way, you shouldn't start a sentence with "and," but anyway, and while the rhetoric of today's groups is more blatantly anti-feminist, their roots can be traced back to these 1970s men's libbers. One of those men, in particular, eventually wrote the quote MRA Bible, end quote, that inspired Paul Elam, who would go on to found the flagship MRA website, A Voice for Men. This is the story of the few years when men tried to spark a parallel pro-feminist movement, linking the personal to the political with varying levels of success, only for it to go very, very wrong. Interesting. I wonder how does this work, where you have a patriarchy that benefits men, only men, and makes women pay the price for that benefit, and then a men's movement and a women's movement both arise in the 60s, but the women's movement succeeds and the men's movement fails in this patriarchy. How does that work exactly? Just out of curiosity.
We live in a society.
Yeah, because we live in a society
that hates women and will spend millions upon millions to make sure that women aren't hated by men. I don't know this. Go ahead, Brian.
I know what they would say. I know what the feminists would say, because I've been getting a lot of this my comments recently. They'd say something to the effect of, well, that is because of supply and demand, because there really is these problems for women. And so people showed more interest in that movement because they actually resonated with them because of their lived experiences. Because with women, the personal really was political. But with men, there was no demand for it. And so it just pittered out because they weren't interested.
Yep, that'd be right. There's always a way to make it work. All right. In 1970, when the women's movement had just burst onto the national scene, a young leftist psychologist, you don't say, named Jack Sawyer, published an article called On Male Liberation in Liberation, a New Left magazine, perhaps best known for publishing Martin Luther King Jr.'s 1963 letter from Birmingham jail in full. Male liberation calls for men to free themselves of the sex role stereotypes that limit their ability to be human, Sawyer wrote. A year later, Life magazine published a long, voicey feature on men's liberation, written, of course, by a dude, I guess that's important to point out, and nested between hilariously sexist ads, a wife carefully preparing a picnic of Pepsi and crudite, I don't know if I'm saying that right, while the men play tennis, and an ad for Puerto Rico featuring a woman in a white bikini. I guess those are hilariously sexist ads now. That's relevant. The writer travels from Berkeley to Flint to Cambridge to Portland, Oregon, talking to participants of these newly formed discussion groups. That was a paragraph. Does anybody want to say anything on it? Or should I just keep going? Okay, I'm just going to keep going then. No?
Actually, I want to note the picture that's illustrating this particular article
at the top.
Yeah, at the top. And I just want to. I was looking at this picture trying to figure out what it was saying, and then I got it. These masks are the hatred of women that
Yeah.
patriarchy expects men to wear, and they're finally getting to let them down and confess to how awful it is to hate women. Oh my god,
Yeah, you didn't know that? Yeah, this
this
is
is so
the mask they live in.
their
Yeah.
hatred of women, and they get to take it off and they confess to each other, oh, it's so awful wearing this mask of hating women that patriarchy, that the society that we constructed makes us do. This is so ridiculous. It is
I
so absurd. I'm going to finish this. So it's just like this is crazy. And I also want to point out that these men are not cactuses. Why is their arm hair? Why does their arm hair look like that? Why does the arm hair make them look like cactuses? Have you ever seen a man's arm hair, person who drew this?
I thought, well, the person who drew it is a woman, and she doesn't understand body hair apparently, or maybe she's
No.
just using like her own body hair as the model for this.
But it's ridiculous. Like body hair, especially on men, it doesn't lay like that. It doesn't poke out like goddamn thorns. It has sort of a pattern to it. It lies in a certain direction. This is ridiculous. Anyway, it just stuck out to me. Go ahead, Prince.
One last thing I want to say about this illustration. Notice, and this is important because these things are always layered. Notice that with all of these, most of these men are white, and their masks are just angry, right? And then the one dude that's sort of he's got like a beard, and his mask is extra angry because it's got like steam coming out of the nose. But the black guy that they're all consoling, his mask is of a zipper mouth, so he's silenced. He's a silenced man that's removing his mask, because toxic masculinity is rage, and it's also the inability to talk about your feelings, right? So for the white guys, it's rage, but for the black guy, it's just not talking about his feelings, because don't want to be racist, so we're just going to do this instead. And that is on purpose, and I dare you to tell me it's not. That's a conscious choice that was made, and that was important. Okay, go ahead.
Are the prickly cactus arms a conscious choice?
It could be something about men being really abrasive, and they just have that as like, they just think that about them. I don't know.
It's just gross.
Or they just don't know how to draw body hair. Like, this is probably a photo
this guy's Adam apple?
Again, it's drawn by a woman. So,
have you ever seen a man in your life, woman? Like, have you ever had sex with one, or are you an incel?
Doesn't want to get too close to them. She's probably a lesbian.
Oh, so she's an incel.
Well, it could be a lesbian.
Incel. Okay. What are you talking about? I didn't hear the word lesbian. I heard the word incel, who's just trying to pretend she isn't.
I don't want to insult incels, though, so I'm just going to call her a lesbian and insult lesbians. All right, go ahead, Prince, if you want to say something.
I was going to say about the whole mask wearer thing is that people aren't positive. The mask you live in metaphor came from Bell Hook's book, 2004 book, The Will to Change Men, Love, and Masculinity, which, if anybody has always, like, feminism sort of didn't used to be about, attacking men and, forcing them at gunpoint to be feminists. I mean, there was always, I think, a little bit of that, but that didn't really start until the fourth wave of feminism that got really big, which the Wikipedia entry states started in 2008. And in the book, The Will to Change, she goes into this the mask you live in metaphor, and if you read that book, you will see so many things that have been mirrored from that book. It's like every feminist movement past or every feminist thing involving men, and why men, patriarchy hurts men too. That book was basically Patriarchy Hurts Men Too, the book, and it's god awful. It seems like it's a compilation of essays from a like sophomore year gender studies course written by a student. It's just, I mean, it's basically incomprehensibly bad, but it will give you an insight into the template that formed the fourth wave feminist push of evangelizing men into the feminist religion. So just saying.
Okay.
Bell Hooks, The Will to Change.
Okay, I have a few more people to thank. I would like to thank Caleb for giving us 25, Remy for giving us 25. Thank you, Remy. Wyatt for giving us 5, Zachary for giving us 5, Phil for giving us 5, and I think what I'm going to do is if we don't make 1,000 by the hour, so by 5 p.m. my time, I think that's 7 p.m. Eastern, I think we'll call it a day. And I'll just get it, I'll try to finish this fundraiser off a different way.
Okay.
But if we do make 1,000, then we can go for, let's say, another half an hour. How's that? That's a deal that I'm going to make with you guys, my audience. And there is oh, you don't like that, Brian.
No, it's okay.
Not I said half hour.
Yeah,
so
you said okay. All right. Yeah,
all right.
Let's keep going then.
Yeah, so if we can make 1,000 by 5, we will continue for another half hour. And if we don't, then we'll close off the show. So that's my deal. That you have 195 to go. Go for it. www.feedthebadger.com. Okay. Let's continue.
All right. Well, Lauren literally just gave us $1.99 and says Brian is pronounced crudité. Crudité. Thank you, Lauren. I didn't know that. Sounds Creole or Cajun. I love that kind of food, by the way. Okay, so the toxic masculinity discussion is the thing that pisses me off the most. I always say this, but it really does. It really pisses me off the most. All right, so here we go. So many guys have it in the back of their minds that they have to be a jock, some kind of super male just to exist, said Mike from Berkeley, who got into men's liberation when being laid off gave him intense feelings of inadequacy. Maybe you just sucked at your job. He'd place an ad
Wait a second.
What?
Let me read this again. So he gave them intense feelings of inadequacy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what. Okay, continue. Sorry, I interrupted you too soon.
Okay. He'd placed an ad in the Berkeley Barb for an all-male consciousness-raising session, forming a small group that would eventually stage a protest at the Playboy Club in San Francisco. Sample sign is one of the signs, smash compulsive masculinism, which rings as familiar, and published 2 issues of a men's liberation newspaper called Brother, Our Enemy Isn't Women, It's the Role We Are Forced to Play, Mike said. The group in Flint, 9 men, mostly auto workers, who met weekly in church after Sunday services, weren't as immersed in countercultural language as their West Coast hippie counterparts, but they were making headway too. Give women economic equality and there will be more freedom for human beings to get what they want from each other, a man was quoted as saying. Once the group brought sandwiches and coffee to a woman's picket line. Oh, well, the men made sandwiches for the women. Okay.
Well, that's not very untypical. Jonathan makes the equivalent for me because I can't eat a sandwich every day. So I was like, what? So what? But he who got into men's liberation when he was laid off gave him intense feelings of inadequacy. So essentially, when he felt like he was useless, he didn't have anything else to. This is what I was talking about before. He didn't have anything else to cope with. Well, I mean, what you would cope with is feeling like you matter. But of course, there's no group except us who talks about making men feel like they matter. But here's the other thing. Our enemy isn't women, it's the role we're forced to play. Well, first of all, Mike, why did you spontaneously decide that somehow all of the men think that their enemy is women? You must have come out of some sort of subconscious process. Like maybe you were dumped by your partner, your female partner, when you lost your job, proving to you that she was only interested in you because you were useful, not that you mattered to her. And maybe you observing that process and how much it hurt you, subconsciously you realize that many, many, many women judge men by how useful they are to them. And furthermore, who are the people putting you in that role of being useful, Mike? I mean, do you really think it's other men? Do other men want you to give them money and things? Do other men really judge other men by being useful? Like, is that I don't know. I'm not a man. Brian, is that really common among men
to what? Finish your question.
To judge other men by their usefulness?
Well, I mean, sadly, yes. But
well, yeah.
I mean, sadly, in a way,
Okay, let me
yes.
put
I
it
mean,
another
isn't
way.
it like
Do men force other men to be useful to them?
no. I think what I was gonna say is that the only reason why men do judge other men based on their usefulness is because men recognize that being useful is how they get their value, like is basically how they are given value from women. So women are the bar at which men operate at, and when other men are not operating at that bar, then you will get judgment from men. Usually though, it's intended to motivate you to become useful. So you might like have like if a friend, in your friend group, a guy loses his job or something, the other guys in the group will say, well, you need to like, get your shit together. And the only reason why you would need to get your shit together other than survival is, to attract a mate. So the only reason why I think it's the main, not the only reason, but the primary reason why is because they want to attract women, and other men know that that's how you do it. So, and I think Karen wanted to jump in and say something. Somebody did, because I hurt myself.
Karen, are you there? Have you left us? Are you in the great beyond? I think she is.
Maybe it was Prince.
Prince,
Yeah,
did you
I
want to say
unmuted
something?
myself and then I accidentally changed my mind. I was going to say that there is, I think that what Brian was just saying, that there's an element of truth that I've noticed to that, which is that in terms of anti-gay homophobia, or whatever word, anti-gay sentiments, I think is a more appropriate word. I definitely found in my life, I mean, I didn't ever really experience a bunch of it past middle school. I went to a high school where everybody was, it was very, very far left, and like people treated us like we were, little, like slightly aristocratic if we were out of the closet at my high school. It was strange. But in college, what I noticed is that a lot of the straight guys were hesitant about me at first, and until they learned that, one, I wasn't scared of them and I could just talk to them like a normal person, and that I also was good at video games and DJing vinyl records, which we had in my dorm room, and so they thought that that was cool and fun to play with. But the other thing is that I got along really, really with the women, and when the women would come around and hang out, they always liked me a whole bunch, and then all of a sudden the guys liked me even more. It was like I was a little party trick for them, seemed like. So, you know.
Hello? Sudden silence. Is it me or
No,
someone? Did
I'm
everyone just drop out? Brian, have we lost you to the ether? Have we
Oh,
lost both
no,
Brian and
I'm
Karen?
here. I thought that you were gonna say something again. You didn't say anything, so.
Oh, all right. Well, we gotta work on our telepathy,
All
our
right,
hive mind.
yeah, exactly. All right,
MRA matrix.
let's move on to the next the next paragraph. The nascent movement was driven by a basic principle, one that's now an accepted, although sometimes neglected, part of mainstream feminism. That men are hurt by gender roles too, that men may have more institutional power, but are still imprisoned by their aggression or emotional constipation, or both.
Can I translate this?
Yeah.
We can use vulnerable men as vectors for our ideology.
Yep, pretty much. Along came the trend pieces. In a 1972 article in the New York Times headline, Men's Lib Almost Underground but a Growing Movement, an industrial designer touted his discussion group, quote, "We are not just rapping about politics or baseball scores, we're talking about feelings," end quote. Yeah, they just discovered this. This is a brand new thing that guys have never done before in 1972. Oh my God, this industrial designer has cracked the code of men. The countercultural search for authenticity turned out to be a boon for feminist ideas. The women's movement raised questions for me about the phony parts of masculinity that I had bought and that had always existed, another man said in the same article. All right. I'm going to move. This is another paragraph. Does anybody want to comment on this, or should I just go on to the next one?
I did have another comment. There's another alternative too. feminism is all about appropriating women's victimhood in order to enact political control. They may have involved themselves in this just to head off any kind of competition. In fact, I would imagine that is what they're motivated by. Because I can't see a genuine interest in men's issues here. I mean,
No.
to say something like, men are hurt by gender roles too. Well, that's not really an honest look at how men experience pain. I'm going to try to shoehorn this into my ideology. Well, that means you don't really put men first. I mean, when I started all this, I was like, it doesn't matter who believes what. My intent is to put the benefit and well-being of men first. Now, that doesn't mean I necessarily put it ahead of women, or I don't consider women at all, but I actually think that in the process of putting men first, there is some consideration of women in that. That's a little more complicated. I won't talk about that today. I'm putting them first ahead of, not necessarily women, but ahead of institutions, ideologies, governments, academia. I put men's well-being ahead of all of that. So I don't think that any of that deserves consideration ahead of men's well-being, and that includes feminism. So if feminism doesn't promote things that promote men's well-being, I'm not going to be involved in feminism. And I don't think that any feminist actually looks at it that way. They will always prioritize feminism over men's well-being. And if they do that, I can't really trust them that they ever have men's interests at heart. Hell, I don't even really trust that they have women's interests at heart, because they really don't put women's interests above those of feminism. But regardless, you can continue to read the
All right.
paragraph.
Well,
No,
wait,
that was
can
the
I
end
add-
of the that was the end of the paragraph. But go ahead, Prince.
Yeah. Well, I would want to add, due to the fact that this was happening in the 1970s, if you look historically through the timeline of the waves of feminism, so the first wave being in the early 1900s and stuff, back then feminism and communism were at odds. They were thought of as different things. Most feminists were, I guess, more the communists didn't like them because they thought that they were selfish, and they thought that and the feminists were not particularly concerned, and they admitted this about men's well-beings. And prior to the Cold War, World War II era, um the uh, the these people didn't get along. Were pretty self-centered. It probably come from a little bit more of a feminist school of thought, and the communists said, no, we want equality for everybody. But a very funny thing happened when during the Cold War in the 1950s and early 1960s era, especially when McCarthyism was still a thing. People were very terrified of being considered communists, and one of the ways that communism managed to survive was by transferring itself into a new feminist movement, which was the second wave and onward. And it's basically, I mean, the joke is feminism is communism in panties, but that really started happening in the late 1960s and the 1970s. And knowing that these people are the worst type of ideologue, the single most destructive, uh with the biggest body count behind it, communism, and then trying to alter it ever so slightly to be a female supremacist version of communism. No, of course they don't have anybody's best interests in mind. Of course they aren't trying to help men, and of course they don't even particularly care about helping women. The only thing they really care about is bringing in the communist utopia and making sure women get all the credit for it, and are the Stalins and Chairman Mao's get to be women or something. That's seemingly what they care about if you actually really study through the history of it.
But their primary weapon seems to be capturing our instincts around protecting and providing for women and whatever vulnerable groups they advocate for.
Yeah, and I think how they managed to survive that the and this has been true of communism and its rise of popularity, is that Karl Marx was not much of a feminist. There's no indication I have seen to make me believe that Karl Marx actually gave a particular crap about women. And in fact, he might have actually cared a lot more about men because he was so obsessed with factory workers and things like that. But a year after the guy died, his little friend, Frederick Engels, who was his patron, who he lived with, and Marx lived off of an allowance with him, Frederick Engels published a book called The Origin of the Family, Private Property, and the State. And that book, since Frederick Engels co-authored the Communist Manifesto, he is considered by a lot of people to be equal in terms of he's one of two people that invented Marxism. And he wrote this book called The Origin of the Family, Private Property, and the State. And it is basically the proto feminist book. It talks about how marriage is an institution that exploits the woman and she's the slave to the husband, blah, 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 blah. And once that line of thinking was introduced into Marxism, it was only, and that was the late 1800s was when Marx died and that book was published. It was right after that that the Communist Party started taking off and really, really gathering a lot of momentum. And I speculate that this had to be because once they had a specific identity politics focused thing that appealed to this vulnerable victim imagination of females, where females were the victims of capitalism and the archaic institution of marriage, then all of a sudden it was really, really easy to get people on board with these communist movements, and they just grew and grew and grew.
The easiest way to get people to hate capitalism is to say that capitalism unfairly benefits men over women, so it harms women. That's the easiest way to get people to hate it.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm wrong about that.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on.
Okay.
And, wait, actually, I'll give you guys a heads up. So we are now at oops, I better go closer.
865. 79%. Yeah.
79% off. I want to thank let's see who Wyatt, who gives us $5, Zachary, who gives us $5. So thank you, Zachary. Thank you, Phil. Oh, I think I might have said these ones again, or did they donate again? I don't know. Dale gave us another $25. Thank you, Dale. Michael gave us another $10, and Georgie gave us $25. Thank you, Georgie. And we are there's going to be another. Let me just refresh to make sure I haven't missed anyone. Nope. And we are now $135 from getting that bonus half hour. So if you guys can manage to rustle through your couch cushions, maybe the push and get into the very bottom of your pants pocket and see if you can find some extra $5, and we'll give you a bonus half hour if we can get that up to 1,000 by 5 p.m. my time, which is 7 p.m. Eastern. So we've got 12 minutes to do it. Can you do it? $365. Go get your $5, guys. Put it in the hat.
Okay.
Feedthebadger.com.
Yeah, I know that some of you must be really, really torn. Should you donate fundraiser or maybe get Andy Worski out of jail on bail fundraiser? But really, God. He made his bed. He made his bed.
Yeah.
Is there a get Andy Worski out of jail fundraiser right now?
Probably.
I like to believe maybe there is.
Yeah, I don't know. It's right up there with the potato salad.
I actually think I think I would probably donate to the potato salad. That guy sounds like he's a really solid gentleman.
Pretty sure the potato salad made like 6 figures. I don't know.
Yeah, it made
but
$60,000.
Yeah. Well, that's not enough. That's still less than Anita Sarkeesian's fucking Kickstarter. So should have gotten on that. Fucking potato salad greater than.
Yes.
Feminist
greater
frequency.
Than.
So.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that Worski's having these troubles. I'm going to keep it's unfortunate. I think, as I would say about most people who end up in a situation like that, perhaps looking at the steps that you took to get to this situation might be fruitful.
Maybe.
But maybe, yeah.
That's asking a lot.
All luck to him.
But it should also be pointed out about Worski is that this is not just some normal guy decided to be a crazy dick on the internet for a while after being mostly nice to people. He also has very standing early childhood abuse issues, which he's been public about before, and so people should remember these things about him.
Yeah, maybe instead of now you've really you've just got
Can
me in
we
the fucking feels.
can we just move on, please?
I agreed. I shouldn't have brought it up. Sorry.
Okay, it's
let's keep
okay.
going.
I want to move on. All right, so I could keep reading this article, or we could go to, because I don't know. This is just going to give us a bunch of backstory. I guess I'll read to the end of this next section. Sometimes these things are just, I think they're just needlessly long. But all right, let's continue. This piece also quoted Warren Farrell, then a PhD student at New York University, writing his doctorate on the political power of the women's movement. He'd recently joined the board of the New York City chapter of the National Organization for Women, the members of whom tapped Farrell to help organize men's consciousness-raising groups. Eventually, there were several hundred groups across the country, usually made up of less than a dozen men, mostly meeting in each other's houses. I emailed Warren Farrell early in my research, dimly aware that his views had since shifted, but curious to hear more about his early male feminist days. After initially hesitating, quote, often Vice wants very attack on men and sensational pieces. So I'm a little fearful about that, he wrote. He agreed to talk to me on the phone. Now in his mid-70s, he lives with his second wife in Northern California, still publishes and speaks on masculinity issues, and, despite being widely known as one of the intellectual fathers of modern MRAs, considers himself a political moderate and backed Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election. Because somehow who you vote for has an impact on you being an MRA, I guess. He traces his click moment back to 1965, right after he graduated college, when his mother expressed regret to him that she never went to grad school and instead focused on marriage. All right.
Okay, but she could have gone to grad school at the time.
She chose not to. She focused on marriage, but then I don't know the story, but if she spent most of her time raising Warren Farrell, was that time wasted? I would say no. So, I mean,
Yeah, it's sort of an uncomfortable thing to tell your kid.
Right.
Like, seriously, that's parentifying.
I wish I had gone to school instead of raising you. I mean, I don't know the story. What? I could be wrong, but...
And it started making Warren take responsibility for his mother's choices. I don't know, it's a little creepy. Let's move on.
Well, yeah, clearly she was a fish woman and Warren was the bicycle that she was riding, even though she didn't need to.
And I think this is like, what Warren talks about in his books and stuff now is that he basically says, I want to live in a world where men can, organize their life around being around their kids. So he still has a strong focus on family. He wants men back in the homes. He wants men more involved with their children. And while some of the stuff that he would like to get to is, I think it's a stretch at best. Some stuff like, why can't we have stay-at-home dads? And I'm like, yeah, why can't we? Except that women have been conditioned at this point to hate stay-at-home dads, when those dads are their husbands. So, but like, aside from that, what he wants is more parents involved with their children so that their children grow up to be more whole human beings, because a child needs a mother and a father. And this person that's writing this article is sort of framing it in that, he must have clicked when he realized that his mother was oppressed because she had to raise a son and didn't get to go to school for whatever it was she might have gone to school for, which of course is left ambivalent. So, all right. Well, anyway, go on, Prince, if you wanted to say something.
No, I wasn't. No, Okay. Let's move on to the next part.
All right, let's move on. On the phone, Farrell was avuncular and even-keeled. He described having a fire in his belly to explore the women's movement and remembered the halcyon days of consciousness raising to be extremely gratifying. As a facilitator of these groups, he'd pose questions like, quote, "What is the biggest hole in your heart?" end quote. The point of these discussions, Farrell told me, was to confront everything that men are told to be. Men would offer their peers support, but they'd also encourage each other to change. Here's the question, though. I'm sure that Warren Farrell has asked it, so I will not assume. But when you ask the questions, everything men are told to be, who is telling men to be things? Because I think what he's talking about, because I went to Warren Farrell's talk in Toronto the last time he was here. It was the first time I met him. And he was talking about how men often have dreams of doing things they want to do. They want to be pilots. They want to go pursue some, a dream that they might have, right? Whether they want to be, it's always something that may not be very, let's say, stable. It might be risky, and it also might not even be very financially satisfying, but it's something that they have a passion for. And he was explaining that, but most of the time, men end up taking something that's practical because they want to, have a stable, they basically go for stability, and they end up giving up their dreams for that stability. And he didn't really get into where that comes from, but I think it's kind of obvious that taking a risk to pursue something that you're passionate about, while it could yield results that will give you a better life, there is also other factors, such as, for example, being practical so that you can attract a mate and start a family, or men's dreams change and having a family becomes their priority. So they say, you know what, I did want to, fly a plane and travel and blah, blah, blah. But I think now I just want, kids and a wife that loves me and the kids that I can raise. And I want the house and the white picket fence and all that. So they basically rearrange their life around that. And they spend a lot of time working really hard to maintain those. First off, hoping to attract a mate, but also to raise that family that they want. This, of course, makes it to where men can't be at home because they have to be out. So Warren Farrell was explaining in his talk that men show their love for their family by not being home for their family because they have to work and provide for their families, right? And so the question that he's posing here, he says he's asking men to confront everything that men are told to be. But the question is, who is telling men to be these things? And I don't think the way that the toxic masculinity narrative is constructed is, it tells us that the pressures for men to behave a certain way comes from men. Other men.
Wait. The toxic masculinity narrative actually tells the pressure for men to behave violently comes from other men. I guess it's up for grabs, the pressure for men to be useful to women, where that comes from. And I would gather from my own experience that it comes from women. Of course, feminists won't admit to that, nor will they admit to the fact that masculinity, men are pressured to be masculine by being useful to women. So we continue, Brian.
Well, what I was getting at is that, yeah, men are, because it definitely comes from women, of course, because men want to be useful to women because that's how they attract women. And women are the ones that say things like, I want a man that can do X, Y, and Z. When you ask a woman what she wants in a man, she will make it pretty explicit. So when men complain, though, that, I feel like I have to work all the time, feminists will say that that's toxic masculinity, that a man has to work in order to support a woman. So they will say it, the condition being that woman is like a stay-at-home mom. So there's always a way to twist the logic so that you basically say, well, if you weren't so toxically masculine, then you would let your wife take, a job that pays better than you so that you could stay at home with the kids, or you could take fewer hours or whatever. which is also something that Warren Farrell has proposed in his talks, where he says, well, maybe we need to change the dynamic so that women, because they are working now and they're making money now, then maybe they should be equal contributors and men shouldn't have to work as much so they can spend more time with their kids. All of it sounds great. The problem is when that happens, women, a lot of the time, if not most of the time, I would argue most of the time, become dissatisfied with their husbands because they make less than them. And feminists will argue that a husband who becomes anxious or nervous because he is making less than his wife is expressing toxic masculinity because he's not as useful to the family. But it's not unfounded, because women do tend to become dissatisfied with their husbands if they're not making as much, or more than they are. It's how you end up in a Charlize Theron situation where you have a woman who is like one of the most beautiful women in the world, who is super rich, super famous, and super attractive, despite being in her 40s, and she is alone because she can't find a man who matches the status that she's looking for, because those men do not exist. So she's screwed, and all of the men that she could have been with are also screwed. I mean, I guess, in a way. I mean, it's probably best that they're not with somebody like that. And I guess Charlize Theron is an extreme example, but you see what I'm saying. It's the catch-22. But
yeah, I was just going to say she's also crazy and dresses up her adopted African son like a little girl, and he doesn't appear to be happy about it.
There is that, but the point is the same. The blaming of this dynamic, this strange thing where if a man isn't making as much as his wife, isn't being this provider and protector because a wife expects this. And I'm not blaming women for this, by the way, because I think that there was definitely a time where all of this stuff was a lot more egalitarian because times were a lot tougher. And so women were like, well, I got to do my part. Like, basically being a housewife was, in fact, a very difficult job. And so if they knew that their men were out there providing for them, then they would do their part. But today we live in the most comfortable society that we've ever lived in the history of our species. And so stay-at-home moms and wives have it a lot easier, but they still, because they've been told by, the feminist movement, this rhetoric in our pop culture, that they deserve better than what they have. So inevitably, they become dissatisfied with what they have. And again, this is just a lot of the time, or at least enough to make men anxious about it, that they leave them. And then, because no fault divorce, they take half of everything in the process, and they take the kids.
Yeah, that's interesting because Warren was talking about how men give up dreams in order to be able to fund families. And the great irony is that when you step on that road, about half of those men will end up as impoverished from pursuing the family route as they would from pursuing their dream.
Yep.
Like, quite honestly, because half of those men will experience a situation where they're their personal, like, they'll have to lose their house, their kids, they'll lose a certain amount in alimony and child support, and it can be a traumatizing experience for men. I've seen men go through it. It's actually really difficult to watch. And they probably ask themselves, well, I went down the route that everyone said was the practical and right route to do, and yet here I am, having basically lost everything. Parents are like, well, be practical. Get a job in the oil patch. Don't get a job as a musician. Don't try to be a musician. And then you end up exactly in the same exact financial situation as you would have if you pursued your dream. Like, seriously, guys, in a lot of cases, women are as dangerous a life choice as just simply going out there and doing the travel that you want to do, buying the motorcycle and then just living day to day. They're just as dangerous as doing something like that. And at the end of the day, they may not give you the enriching memories. But I don't know. I'm not a guy, so I may be talking out my ass. So
Yeah.
let's keep going.
Well, we're at 80% and it's 6:04. Do you want me to keep
going? Oh yeah,
going?
that's right. No, it's time to stop.
We're 20%. Look, there is a link in the low bar So you can go there and donate. Last round of donations. Go to the link in the low bar to give us a little bit of help. If you don't see it, try refreshing the page. All right, so we are at we are at the hour. We're at 80%. You want to do these shout outs?
Okay, let's see what we got. Thank you. Let me refresh here. Okay, so thank you. I already said Georgie. I think he might have given again. No, he didn't. Thank you to Lola, and thank you to who gives us $5, and thank you to Wyatt who gives us 10. So we are at the hour, and we do still have $180 or $120 left. And I did say that we would end the show if we didn't make to 1,000, because I know that Brian is judging from Brian's groaning, he really wants to get back to.
I'm just it's Sunday. I'm exhausted.
I'm just gonna blame you. Just let it happen.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, it's just the way it works. I'm
Alice is the one that gets headaches from sitting in front of the computer too long. So
yeah, I'm actually doing okay on that score.
Mhm.
I'm not really feeling too bad. I might start to feel bad if we go much, but I was willing to go an additional half hour.
Well, we're at 80%. Do you want to stop then?
Yes, that I said that we would stop if we didn't make 1,000 by the hour.
Guys, we didn't do it. We're so
No,
close.
we didn't.
We need like
We
what?
were
200
$120. 120.
No.
120.
Well, I mean the actual goal is $10.95 though. $1,095. So I'm saying if we had like $215, we'd be there.
Yeah,
So.
I know. It's like hopefully it'll trickle in. I'll leave the fundraiser up. This is I guess the first time that we've ever had one of these, and we haven't fully funded it during the time that we are actually live. I am not exactly sure where we lost Karen, by the way.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to Karen,
and we don't even know why. Like maybe
she's still in the chat. Like she just hasn't spoken. She's probably
I know she's there.
Yeah, she's probably taking it in the butt or something. But anyways,
taking the butt. Maybe she's just feeding people. That's all.
Yeah, okay.
We have to go immediately to that one. All right, but
yeah,
anyway,
because it's like 5, and I don't know.
It's been a while. To be fair, this was one of the largest fundraisers, and we would have pretty much completed it if it had been a previous one. Well, we would have completed it if it had been a previous one. So good job, everyone. We almost made it. I think we're all tired. I think everybody's tired of giving us shekels. Brian is tired of hosting this stream. I probably want to get away from the screen before I get a freaking migraine. And I don't know. Are you tired of anything, Prince? Life? Feminists?
Sure. What? I mean, yeah.
You know what?
Yeah.
All right.
Have some water and things like that.
I want to say something.
Okay,
Maybe you guys don't know about this. So do you guys know about Avi? I forget his name. He's an Australian guy who I believe he's Israeli. Well, I know he's Jewish, right? And he has like a YouTube channel, I believe, where he goes around and does these sort of like in-person interviews where he talks to them about stuff. And he's concerned about the migrants that are sort of coming into Australia because it's like, it's changing things. And it's a threat to him as a Jew because I believe that they're Muslims that are coming into the country, right? And Jim Jeffries, who is an Australian comedian who has a show called The Jim Jeffries Show, wanted to bring this guy Avi on his channel to do a little spot on him, as it were. Now, the Jim Jeffries Show, which is something that airs on Comedy Central, had previously had Richard Meyer, who is also known as Diversity in Comics, who is currently known as Comics Matter, I believe. Anyway, had him on to talk about Comicsgate stuff. And when they had him on, they clearly edited the footage to make Richard Meyer look as terrible as possible. And, it was just like this really, really awful hit piece, right? And so Avi knew about that, and he said he would go on Jim Jeffries' show under a couple of conditions. He said, I'll come on your show under 2 conditions. 1, I don't want to be connected to neo-Nazis at all. And 2, I think it was like that I'm not anti-Islam or something like that. And naturally, they ignored both of those. They did a full interview and they butchered the shit out of it. And they not only did they connect him to neo-Nazis, and they connected him to well, they try to tie him to, like, I don't know, anti-Islamophobic, or I'm sorry, Islamophobia or whatever. They also connected him to the Christchurch shooting, even though the interview that he did with Jim Jeffries was months before the Christchurch shooting actually took place. And so we know this to be true because Avi knew that they were going to do that, and he secretly recorded the entire interview with Jim Jeffries and put it up in pieces on his YouTube channel, where he basically put side by side, like, I guess, a clip from the show, the final edited version, and then he put it up next to his version. Now, that's just to catch you guys up to speed. In case you already know about that, I apologize for repeating myself. But here's the thing that's really interesting. So Avi had basically said, I am going to, because he saw that, you know, that they butchered his footage and he put that out there, and that Comedy Central and Jim Jeffries didn't say anything about this stuff. Like, they remained silent on it when it's obvious that they know that that's out there, because Jim Jeffries got a bunch of shit on Twitter, and he ended up closing his Twitter account, I believe, or at least like backing off of Twitter or whatever. So Avi said that he wants to know why, you know, this happened. He wants an apology. He wants him to respond to what happened. And he actually said, I'm going to go to Comedy Central and confront Jim Jeffries to talk to him about this. And he basically said on his YouTube, I'm going to do that, and we're going to have a conversation, you know. And he didn't say when exactly. He just said it's going to happen soon, right? So that was it. And then just the other day, Sydney Watson, who is also in Australia, and I'm bringing this up because Sydney Watson is, she had that men's march in Australia, and she's very concerned with the situation between men and women, in particular men's issues. She seems to care a lot about that. But she's also friends with Avi, and she is a dual citizen, Australia and America. So Avi and Sydney flew out, Sydney Watson, not the city. They flew out to the United States, to LA, to confront Jim Jeffries, I assume. And they were stopped at the border. Border Patrol stopped them both. And they actually brought out the FBI and Border Patrol, and they deported Avi. And they wanted to deport Sydney, but they couldn't because she's got dual citizenship. So just telling you guys that happened. It's fucked up. It shocks me, but it's not really surprising. And it was confirmed later on. The reason why was because Comedy Central contacted the FBI and told them that they felt threatened, and that he was going to show up and try to do something dangerous and violent, when the only thing that Avi had was his camera. And this wasn't, in fact, a, what's the name of that chick, that YouTuber that had those really weird videos where she did aerobics and she like drove to YouTube and shot the place up? It wasn't like that at all. You know what I'm talking about? I can't.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to tell you guys that had it happened, and maybe you guys can give us some more shekels in the meantime. I was just like buying some time so you guys can like donate some more, but it didn't seem to work. But yeah, it's pretty fucked up, and I find it really upsetting. And that's basically, I just wanted to share that with you.
You know, like, I mean, if they need a few extra days to do it, that's fine. I'm pretty sure that over time we'll get the additional, what?
115
No.
$215.
$215. So I think we should probably get it over time. Some people might be waiting till they get paid. I mean, it's a bit higher than we usually ask for, so I can understand that it was a bit much of an ask. So, and I'm perfectly happy with taking the time and just going and having a hot bath, maybe eating some broth. All right.
Okay.
Let's slide this into an ending here. Okay. Thank you for that additional content there, Brian. And again, if you want to help Prim and Hannah and make sure they can continue to put on great content, please go to www.feedthebadger.com. The fundraiser is still open because we didn't successfully get it funded during the show. So go there and put in $5, $10. Every little bit helps. And thank you to everyone else who donated to get us this far. Really appreciate you. I'm glad that that we got this far. All right, let's end this.
All right, thanks guys for coming on.
Wait.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, if you guys haven't checked out my channel, I'm Prince of Queens. You can search for it on YouTube. I made a video about ContraPoints recently that a lot of people liked. If you dislike ContraPoints, go check it out. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, I watched the ContraPoints video. I liked it a lot, and I think that it's very important that a lot of these sort of like new lefty YouTube people that have been rising up with like oddly really like high end kind of expensive looking content, but they're pushing with in a very sort of I would call manipulative and sinister way really bad ideas are rising up, and they are not being responded to because a lot of people in skepto YouTube have since decided for some reason that they have moved on from that discussion, and it's not worth responding to anymore. But I think that is bad, and that you know, if you guys, if anything, these things should be talked about. ContraPoints is an example. Big Joel is another example. I think Three Arrows, Sean and Jen are still out there, and you know what? I think that basically not to engage is like you're not being a part of the conversation. Response videos are at an all-time low. I think there aren't enough people doing them. So
what are they doing? The skeptosphere people.
They're, you know, they like, I don't know, Armored Skeptic talks about the importance of centrism, and he reviews movies, and I think that who else? Chris Raygun has you know, he tries to just focus on comedy for the most part when a video comes out. And I mean, Sargon doesn't respond to videos anymore. He's kind of like he talks about like certain articles, or he looks at,
well,
you know,
he still
just
does.
He does more or less. Yeah.
But I that I bring up in the ContraPoints video is that I mean, yeah, the response video thing is at a low. Panels did kind of throw in the towel or move on to almost exclusively just streaming all the time, like, because I guess they get money in super chats, and I don't watch their streams, so I don't really know what they talk about. But one of the things that with like with the ContraPoints crew, you know, like Philosophy Tube, Three Arrows, ContraPoints, there's another one called Innuendo Studios, they're all the same channel. They all make their videos excessively long. Like, they go on for like 25 minutes about something that could easily be said in 5 minutes in terms of their point and their idea. They deliberately obfuscate their idea so that making a response video is particularly difficult. And I am positive that they're doing that on purpose. So,
well, I'm actually starting to make response videos to these, at least Renegade Cut. I did one for Renegade Cut. I'll probably, you know, guys, if you have videos that you want me to respond to that are these feminist videos, I did actually go through Renegade's Cut's toxic masculinity at one point. I got so frustrated with his multiple contradicting definitions that I had to step it up a notch. And
yeah, you have to be. This is the thing too with their videos nowadays. What Prince is saying is right. They take like a half an hour to make a point, so response videos become difficult because you don't want your video to be a full hour, right? So I think that might be on purpose, but I don't know. And you know, like, it's like if you make a 5-minute video, like your typical bedroom feminist, right? That's like a teenager makes a 5-minute video explaining why she likes feminism. You can respond to it, and your video could be 10 minutes long. But if they make like a really long video where they use a lot of $5 words and, you know, a lot of like pointless like little skits or whatever that don't really make an argument, then you have to fish through all like of that.
They're like a Family Guy joke.
Yeah, right. There's a lot of non sequiturs, like things where they kind of go off on tangents to crack some jokes, or to just like misrepresent. It makes it like more of a process to respond, but I still think it's worth doing. So
okay, so I'm going to just point something out here. When I said that we would go for an extra half hour if we made the actual goal, and then I heard you groaning, I was like, I feel like I'm doing something to Brian. And then now you're here extending out the show over the time that you groaned about.
Yeah, before. I know. Well, I'm ready to wrap it up.
Capricious here.
Capricious. Yep. I'm ready to wrap it up. So anyway, with that said, I just wanted to like make that point. I want to thank you guys for coming on the show. Please subscribe. I see some new faces in the chat. Please subscribe to the channel. We do shows here every single day, and mostly
but not Saturdays.
I host most of them. Yeah, every day except for weekends. This is kind of unusual, although we do have the occasional Sunday show. yeah, please subscribe if you are not subscribed. If you're new here and you like the content, we also have call-in shows. We talk about news stories. We talk about bigger ideas. It's all very well. There's a lot of variety, and we have lots of different people on. And yeah, I would like to see more new faces. And also, be sure to give us a comment. Tell us what you think about what we talked about today. Give this video a like. And hit the bell for notifications if you are subscribed so that you know when our videos go live. Thank you guys for coming on the Fundzerker stream or the Rantraiser, depending on how you want to look at it. And we'll talk to you guys very soon.
Bye.